Welcome to the College Football Playoff Selection Show, presented by AT&T 5G.
The college football playoff relationship seemed solid, but when Utah blew out number 4 USC in Vegas Friday night, it was clear what happened in Vegas would not stay in Vegas. The Trojans' quickie divorce from the CFP put a playoff spot back on the market, and recently jilted Ohio State was the perfect thirsty candidate to step into the rematch-making business. Now, TCU's fall in the Big 12 yesterday likely didn't put its romance with the CFP on the rocks. That didn't stop Alabama from swiping right. Got to shoot your shot, right? Georgia and Michigan avoided all of the drama of any breakup, but there is still relationship work to be done, even for the Dogs and Wolverines. In a matter of moments, we're going to find out the 4 teams who can put a ring on it.
You're looking for improvement. Resume, best wins.
All of the wiggle room is gone. Final decisions will have to be made.
College football and Hollywood have always been in the same business. Writing stories, making stars, sparking emotion.
It's a highlight reel tonight.
All with the same goal, to hold that golden trophy. That's why it feels so perfect to end this season in LA.
Sweet, sweet, sweet sunshine.
But to get to there, your name must be called here first.
Touchdown! Give him some end zone.
From those who have been on this stage before,
Georgia on the mountaintop.
to those who have come so close.
Wolverine Nation, the long drought is over.
And to those still holding out hope.
Intercepted!
We have our nominees. Now it's time to announce the winners. Welcome to the College Football Playoff Selection Show.
Committee had a little bit of work to do over the last couple of days after some conference championship game upsets, at least in terms of rankings. Teams in the top 4, a couple of them losing. How much staying power would there be for TCU? We will have the rankings exclusively coming up soon. There's no real watch party at Georgia. They're the reigning national champions. They've claimed the SEC championship trophy. Yeah, they know how it's in. Wake us up when we find out who we're going to play in that 1-4 game. Maybe a similar deal from Michigan. Gene Wojciechowski sent me a picture this morning. Empty room in Michigan. They know they're going after claiming their second consecutive Big Ten championship. However, a little bit of anxiety. TCU lost in overtime to Kansas State yesterday. Memories of 2014 among the Frog faithful still fresh when they fell out of the playoff in the inaugural year of the CFP. And then that one other spot will be full of drama. Conference championship games that started on Friday night, as I alluded to off the top. USC was ranked number 4, and they got steamrolled. Utah just hammered them. Won 47-24, 44-7 run to close that game. This was an absolute thrilling game in the Big 12 yesterday. College Game Day was there. Deuce Vaughn and Kansas State win it in overtime. And you know, under the new 12-team format that's going to come up in a couple weeks, Kansas State would have an automatic bid. Georgia, yeah, they pretty much put the hammer down early against LSU. You see how badly they outrushed the Bayou Bengals, won it 50-30. Georgia on its way back to the playoff, as is Michigan. Michigan got a challenge for a while from Purdue. Purdue couldn't finish in the red zone, and eventually Harbaugh and the Wolverines pulled away, and they are undefeated. We have reporters everywhere. Laura Rutledge is with Georgia. Gene Wojciechowski in Ann Arbor. Jen Latta is at Ohio State. Chris Budden right in the middle there of it with TCU. And Marty Smith in Tuscaloosa, where they're holding out the faintest glimmer of hope that somehow the Crimson Tide can work their way back into the college football playoff. Glad to have you with us with the College Football Playoff Selection Show. Reese Davis, Kirk Herbstreit, Jesse Palmer, David Pollack, and Joey Galloway. We're going to have a little bit of drama, maybe at least in terms of the way things are ordered. What are you most curious about here?
We were all sitting around here before the show got started, and we said, man, you imagine if USC and TCU won, everybody held serve, we wouldn't have a whole lot to talk about. As Reese just showed you, of course, SC goes down, TCU loses, and now we have some tension. Now we have some interesting suspense. And I think the big question to me, Jesse is 3 and 4. We know about Georgia. We know about Michigan. I think 1 and 2.
Yep.
Who is 3? Who is 4?
I think that's what it is. I think TCU losing a close one in overtime against a top 10 opponent at Kansas State in the Big 12, even with the losses that keep them in. And do they hold 3? That's the big question to me. They've got a better win against a common opponent in Texas than Alabama, who some people are wondering, could they sneak into the top 4? And I think the close loss, Joey, in the Big 12 title game, I think trumps them over Ohio State, who lost by 22 against Michigan.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We went into yesterday, and I truly believe that 1, 2, and 3 could have lost, and they would still be in the same place.
Yeah.
We really just didn't have anybody else outside of that top 5 teams that could have a chance to get in because of the late drama of the season with teams losing. I would be surprised if Ohio State was to jump TCU because it was a close game. That's sort of the feeling going in, that TCU could lose a close game and not be penalized. So I think it'll stay pat. I think 1, 2, and 3 were already set.
For the first time ever. We've never done that before. We've never gone 1, 2, and 3 could lose and they could still be in. We're always kind of looking for something for seeding purposes and somebody who would be out, somebody who would go in. Yeah, but it's interesting to me too, because Ohio State was clearly the committee's favorite throughout the season when the resumes were very comparable. Now TCU losing makes those resumes a little bit more comparable. So I'm interested to see if they move Ohio State ahead, which would mean a rematch. Michigan and Ohio State, are they willing to do that as well? Because you just saw that a couple weeks ago, and are they willing to say, hey, Ohio State's better than TCU, I'm going to put them at 3?
You know what? I hope they don't do anything. We'll talk to Boo Corrigan about this a little bit later on. They shouldn't concern themselves at all with whether there's a rematch in terms of the teams at the top. Bowl games later on, just rank the teams. And I think, I don't look at it.
Think they do, though.
Yeah,
I think that room gets
they
together
don't.
and they start to think about TV ratings and
they should
rematches.
I don't think they do.
Right. I don't think they do either.
Just rank 1, 2, 3, 4.
You know, and I don't look at it really as being penalized for losing the game, because you made a great point. You get to step back and look at the whole thing now, and employ some football judgment. It's not some egregious sin if Ohio State winds up being number 3, which we'll find out shortly. We've got reporters everywhere across the country among the 5 teams most likely to get in. We feel like that it's probably the 4 teams in Alabama. But let's start with the reigning national champion, Georgia Bulldogs. That's where we find Laura Rutledge.
Well, Reese, Georgia accomplished a huge goal they had set, which is this team doing something that last year's team didn't do on their way to winning the national championship, and that was winning the SEC championship. They did it in dominant fashion. So Kirby Smart said this morning the message to the team last night was all about honoring the seniors and those players who have come before them, who even sent messages in prior to the game encouraging this team this year to win that SEC championship. Means so much to those guys. Now, there will be a different message today at 12:45 when the team meets just in the room right over there, where Kirby Smart says he's got a whole plan about how he will keep this team motivated, and part of that plan will revolve around the defense being better, which is not something we often say about Georgia, but giving up 549 yards of total offense, 30 points to LSU. Kirby Smart's going to lean into that. He's going to use it with this team. He said that will not be tolerated. That type of performance will not be tolerated from this Georgia defense. It's not the standard that they've set. Some of it had to do with the complexion of the game, but don't tell Kirby Smart that, as he'll do everything he can to make sure this team is more than ready for the college football playoff. Let's go over to Michigan and Gene Wojciechowski.
Thanks, Laura. A lot of the players, staff members, coaches, they've come in here and they've wanted to get their picture taken with this Big Ten championship trophy. What they really want, though, is to take pictures with a national championship trophy. It was a late night for these Michigan players. Donovan Edwards, who was the MVP of the championship game last night, didn't get back to their hotel here in Indianapolis until 2 a.m. They went to sleep thinking about that second consecutive Big Ten championship they'd won, and they also went to sleep thinking about Georgia and avenging that loss from last year in the playoff to the Bulldogs. That's what they're thinking about. But first things first, they have the selection show. They'll find out who they play in the semifinals. The team heads back to Ann Arbor later today. Jim Harbaugh and his staff go out recruiting. Now, let's go to Jen Latta at Ohio State.
Yeah, what a difference a week makes. 1 week ago, this program was reeling after a devastating loss to Michigan. I'm told that lingered around this place, that funk, that fog, until about Thursday. Ryan Day saying, yeah, it took a chunk out of us. But Friday night, as guys were watching the Pac-12 championship game, they realized there may be an opportunity here. They started to chomp at the bit a little bit at the opportunity to get back out on the field and fight again. Today, players are gathered here at the Woody Hayes Center. Ryan Day had his staff meeting at around 10 o'clock. The players are hanging out in the back there. They will watch the college football playoff announcement and get ready for the month ahead of them. But there is an optimism in this building that did not exist 1 week ago, and they want to make sure that if given the opportunity to play in the college football playoff, they will seize that opportunity and potentially salvage their season. Now let's go over to Chris Budden, who is standing by with TCU.
Thank you, Jen. How about this? A year ago, Sonny Dykes was standing in this exact same room being introduced as the TCU head coach. And now this room is filled with the team and media and fans as they sit around waiting to see if they are in the college football playoffs. There wasn't a lot of sleep, but there is some confidence that they will be in the top four. When you look at the resume, the strength of record. Also, when you look at what happened in 2014, when TCU and Baylor were both left out of the playoff, when the Big 12 did not have a championship game, they sat idle that weekend. Sonny Dykes and TCU believes that now that they were in the championship game, and even with a loss, they should not be penalized for at least being in that game. Now let's go out to Tuscaloosa and Marty Smith.
Thank you, Chris. I left the SEC Championship in Atlanta Saturday evening and drove to Tuscaloosa to Nick Saban's house and had an extensive conversation with him about all these scenarios. He touched on two specific points. Number one, vulnerability. What does that mean? It means how did your team lose and when did your team lose? He said the context for Alabama, as we know, they lost to Tennessee and LSU on the last play of both games on the road on the last play with a quarterback that wasn't 100%. And he said, like that, it had a substantial impact on us losing those games. So I played devil's advocate as it pertained to Tennessee. I said, where do you stand on head-to-head? You lost to that team. He said, I don't talk about other teams. I talk about my team. And my team had no bad losses. Other teams in this discussion did have bad losses, and not only were they bad losses, they were bad losses late in the season. The other big point that he touched on was odds to win. He said, if we played against these other teams, would we be favored or would we be the underdog? You tell me. And if we would be favored, then we're probably one of the best four teams, which is ultimately the goal. The last thing that I spent a lot of time talking to him about was national championship potential. And Reese, I asked him, this team right now with a healthy Bryce Young and Will Anderson, are you national championship caliber? And he said, without question, absolutely national championship caliber. Reese?
Marty, I don't think there's any question about that. They'd be favored against everybody with the exception of Georgia. But the problem is that the performances and the two losses, they had opportunities to win both those games, did not. These are the resumes. Look, I insisted on Tennessee being included in this. You also have to factor in two things, the just annihilation at the hands of South Carolina and the injury to Hendon Hooker. But they beat Alabama. They have the same record as Alabama. They didn't make the conference championship game either. So, but I think it's pretty clear that we're going to wind up with TCU and Ohio State. Bracket's empty right now. The most powerful man in college football is a man called Zach Feldman. He is our graphics operator. Coaches, he'll fill it all out. Zach's going to get it done. Coaches making their cases.
Your whole season's gone, and all of a sudden you start to build hope, and then you start to see the opportunity where, everything's right out in front of you. It's almost like a second lease on life.
How did you lose? Losing 2 games by 4 points on the last play of the game in tough environment in the SEC on the road are not bad losses. And just because they're a 1-loss team versus a 2-loss team, they show their vulnerability as a team when you have a bad loss.
I think we're certainly deserving. I think the league is one of the best leagues in the country to go through undefeated in the league. Certainly we ought to get in. I don't think we should be punished for coming to the Big 12 championship game.
College Football Playoff Selection Show is presented by AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure. Welcome back to the College Football Playoff Selection Show, presented by AT&T 5G.
Georgia.
Keep chopping and do what we do.
Ohio State. TCU.
Frogs remain undefeated.
Alabama. Michigan.
Job's not finished. Go blue.
Who's In.
Yeah, sing it. Almost had me down, came back to life.
This is what we've got coming up, a 4-hour extravaganza. We have the rankings in. I think Zach's about to finish typing. We're about to show you the top 4. At 12:30 Eastern Time, Boo Corrigan, who is the chair of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, will talk about those choices. All 4 teams that make the playoff, they'll join us later today. And then if you're wondering where your team's going to fall, we'll show you the rest of the top 25, all of the New Year's 6 bowls. Something to think about with the New Year's 6 this year in terms of the conference affiliations. There's really only one at-large spot in there because all of the other bowls are contractually obligated with the conferences. This is College Football Playoff National Championship Trophy presented by Dr. Pepper. That is the prize that 4 teams will compete for. So we're here all afternoon. A lot of interviews, a lot of talk, a lot of matchup talk. You guys ready to see it?
So ready.
Let's go.
So ready.
It's time.
Do you know?
No, I don't. I have no idea.
Okay.
No, I have no idea. Hey,
y'all didn't get the. I got it all right.
Look,
you have it.
Hey man, you're not new here. You know we don't see it ahead of time.
No, I just want to
This is year
reassure
9.
everybody.
Are we going
people
6 to
texted
1
me like
or
No,
1 to
it's
6?
1
I
through
don't
4
1 through
here this
4
year.
now.
The opening, then we'll show the rest of the top 25.
1 through 4, yeah.
1 through
the
4.
suspense is at the back.
Homer and Jesse.
Yeah.
So we're going to
Homer
start
and
at
Brooke
1.
Like this is their first year here.
It's like Christmas again.
Are we going to start at 25? How are we going to do this?
You know, here's the other thing, Joey. Think about this. This is the penultimate year, next to last, that we'll have this format. One more time, then it goes to 12.
Joey, while you
We'll
got
also show you after we unveil the whole top 25 how the 12-team format would look this year, which will be kind of instructive as well. So, College Football Playoff Rankings presented by AT&T 5G. The top seed in the College Football Playoff is
The
Georgia Bulldogs. No surprise here as Georgia, the reigning national champion. They go back, and they're the 4th different team to be a number 1 seed in the college football playoff.
Typical number 1 team. They just got better as the year went on, dealt with the pressure of being the defending champs. The offense, defense gets a lot of the attention because of Kirby, but the offense this year, juggernaut. Whoever matches up with them better get used to 12 personnel, running game, play action pass, and a quarterback that plays with a chip on his shoulder.
Alabama, Clemson, LSU previously have been number 1 seeds in the college football playoff. Now Georgia joins them at 13-0. And number 2, we assume we're about to see Michigan here.
There they are. How about Michigan? Soft non-conference schedule to start the year, but that win against Ohio State on the road, that was an absolute statement. Winning it by 22, and this is a very complete team offensively and defensively. Of course, we know about the injury to Blake Corum at running back. They're going to need J.J. McCarthy to continue playing the way he's been playing these last 2 games versus whoever they end up facing in the semifinal. But right now, this is the most explosive offense I've seen from Jim Harbaugh.
And 7's pretty good. I know Corum's down. Donovan Edwards looks
You
good.
can see the players behind Gene Wojciechowski dancing with it. Yeah, that is a confident ball club. We know we're number 2.
They feel different, don't they, David? Don't they feel different from last year?
I think that's the big thing. You got a lot of experience last year. You were happy to beat Ohio State, happy to beat there. Now you're like, okay.
They got unfinished business.
I got some business to accomplish.
J.J. McCarthy said that just recently. He said that loss last year to Georgia in the semifinal, that's continuing to motivate us, and that's going to fire them up in the postseason.
Okay, just a quick note here. Georgia is going to play in Atlanta in one semifinal because you get the geographical preference number 1. That will place Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl in Phoenix. And the question is, will it be a rematch against Ohio State or someone else sitting at number 3? Let's have a look at the 3rd ranked team.
Hey, all right.
TCU holds its place. This is what you expected. I will admit, somewhat surprising. I thought Ohio State would get that 3rd spot. What do you think?
TCU has earned this spot. They did it all season long. And so as we've talked about this team, and right there in the middle of the season, when they played 4 ranked opponents and they won those games, and people started...
Look at Duncan. Look at Duncan.
He's still trying to catch his breath. And he's still trying to catch his breath.
This is something that they've earned, not just this season, but building up to this. Sonny Dykes done a terrific job with this team in his first season. But this is a respect that they've earned this spot. And it speaks to what they did all season long, not just yesterday, not just losing in overtime in a 3-point game, but what they've done all season long. they deserve to be at number 3.
Well, I think the thing with TCU all year long was a lot of close games, right? Back and forth. And you heard Boo talk about it, the chairman. He said defense had to improve. You saw the defense improve a little bit down the stretch, but we know they're explosive. We know they remained undefeated all throughout the season and then lost in the championship game. So I thought it was an interesting debate.
Be a good matchup.
But, you know, it's really interesting, too, with Michigan and TCU. You have two teams making the college football playoff with quarterbacks who didn't start the season in Duggan's case, not the starter at all, and in McCarthy's case, not the undisputed starter. Now, TCU said that they're the second team to make the playoff when unranked in the preseason. I want to posit this and build a little drama here. Ohio State, been playing the conference championship game, had the blowout loss. Alabama's got the closer losses. Maybe we're back to a 2017 thing, and while we spent last night saying TCU or Alabama, maybe it's Ohio State or Alabama here at number 4.
Are you showing now, or are you trying to create drama?
I just built the drama. That's what we do. It's Ohio State.
There it is.
No drama.
So the Buckeyes are in, and we don't have the rematch of the Michigan-Ohio State game yet. Instead, Ohio State will have to do what a lot of Buckeye fans thirst to do, go into SEC territory, prove a point against an SEC team. I think these teams are supposed to play in the regular season, and because of some scheduling things in the near future, they decided not to, so we'll get it in Atlanta instead.
And I don't think anybody disputes how talented Ohio State is. They're one of the most talented teams in the country. They got stars. They got a chance to get a little bit healthy, too, with some of those guys. And so Ohio State's going to come in. And what did you say yesterday, Kurt? What did you say yesterday?
I can't remember.
in the many flights, what did you say yesterday about everybody's going to tell them for the next however many weeks?
They're going to be poor mouth for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yep.
They're going to show up, whether it's good enough or not. There's always a team that shows up disrespected. Yep. And there's nobody that should show up more disrespected and angry than Ohio State.
It's a team the committee liked all along. They were number 2 in every college football playoff ranking up until last week. The resume stands for itself. Impressive win against Penn State and Notre Dame. And also from the eye test, too, watching them, they're much more complete than they've been in years past. Their defense is a lot better this year under first-year DC Jim Knowles.
All right, let's see who is the next team out. First team out. And number 5.
Alabama, right?
It is Alabama. Alabama's number 5, and I think Tennessee's going to be 6.
Even though they beat them.
Man. And Tennessee is 6, but a different team now without Hendon Hooker. Yeah. So what this means, and we'll get to this later on this afternoon, is this means Alabama in the Sugar Bowl against Kansas State and Tennessee in the Orange Bowl against Clemson later on.
How about if you're Tennessee? You're kicking yourself for losing against South Carolina here. Because if they win that game and all the stuff unfolds the way it did, I think Tennessee's in.
So about Clemson. Well, no, I would say 2 things. I would say if Tennessee just won the game and Hooker hadn't gotten hurt. With Hooker being hurt, that might have changed the dynamic, might have allowed Ohio State to still be in. But if those 2 things don't happen, they win the game.
Wins against Alabama and LSU on the resume.
Clemson absolutely should be kicking themselves. The loss to South Carolina, and which took away a lot of the drama of today, was Clemson losing to South Carolina. LSU losing to Texas A&M. A lot of losses there at the end, but Clemson has to be thinking, it was right there. All the things we needed to fall into place happened for us, and we didn't capitalize.
Yeah, and if that number 2 were in there at quarterback earlier, they'd probably really have an opportunity. Ohio State, this is a team that is going to be looked at as backing into this Final Four. What better way to try to earn some respect? I would argue two teams in 2 venues in the postseason are the toughest. A good LSU team in the Superdome. Mm-hmm. You don't want to play that game. Nope. And playing Georgia in Atlanta. I mean, you talk about energy in a building. Mm-hmm. So if you want to try to get redemption, there's no better way to get redemption, if you can, to try to stand up to Georgia, Kirby Smart, in that building.
There's a lot of people at home right now shouting, too, because of what they last saw from Ohio State, right? Losing by 22 points and getting blown out at home against Michigan. People got to remember, though, teams have gotten beat badly before and still got in, right? Happened to Georgia back in 2017, took a bad loss against Auburn, still made it in. Notre Dame got beat bad by Clemson in the ACC title game by over 20 points in 2020 and still got in. Over the course of the year, the entire resume, Ohio State was a dominant team, scoring a bunch of points and playing better defense, and that was reflected in the college football playoff rankings each and every week.
This is the 3rd worst loss, to your point, by an eventual playoff team. It's the 2nd worst to the Notre Dame loss that you mentioned. The difference with the Notre Dame loss is they had beaten the team that beat them early in the season when they played Clemson twice. but the 22-point loss by Ohio State will be the third worst overall by a team that eventually made the playoff field. Note, too, that on New Year's Eve, what a way to ring out 2022. 8 o'clock Eastern Time, Georgia and Ohio State in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. That will be preceded by the Verbo Fiesta Bowl, Michigan and TCU.
Kirk, which
at
game
4 o'clock Eastern
which
Time.
game are you calling?
I think we know the answer to that.
Because Joey and I want to know where we're going.
We would like to make travel plans, so if you could decide soon, we'd appreciate it.
Okay. How soon do you want to know?
I don't know if are we allowed to announce that? Yeah, I don't know if we know.
Look at Kirk.
I think we know.
Look at his face. You don't think he knows?
I think we know.
I don't know.
I think we know.
Take us to break.
I'm not sure we're ready to go to break yet.
Joey, I don't sweat all year. I get around Joey.
So Ohio State makes it into the field. And look, I got some pushback yesterday from Ohio State fans, and I'm going to stick with this. No team in the college football playoff era has gotten the benefit of the doubt more often than Ohio State. They're now 4-1 in decisions. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with the decisions, but they've gotten the benefit of the doubt in 14, in 16, in 20 when they only played 6 games, and now here they are again. Probably rightfully so, but they get the benefit of the doubt and make it into the field. Pleased to be joined by the chair of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, Boo Corrigan. Boo, I think it was pretty easy at the top. A couple of questions about TCU, but everybody loves the inclusion at the end. What carried the day for Ohio State over Alabama? Was it simply that they had 1 loss and Alabama had 2?
Well, I think you look at the big wins as well as part of this, and the win that Ohio State has over Notre Dame, the win they have over Penn State, compare that to Alabama with the wins over Texas, Mississippi State, some other close games. Again, keep in mind that the Michigan game did get away from them, but it was a 1-score game early in the fourth quarter. And as we looked at the total body of work that we had, the committee was comfortable with Ohio State at 4 and Alabama at 5.
Okay, then one spot above them, if you look at the entire body of work, and I understand the idea that TCU played overtime game, tough loss to Kansas State yesterday, you could probably pretty easily make a football judgment that Ohio State was deserving of moving up. So why TCU 3 and Ohio State 4?
Again, you're looking at body of work. We talked earlier in the year about being maybe a little bit more balanced in their defense, and you look at the last 5 games, I believe they're giving up about 20 points a game on defense. The way that game flowed yesterday and their ability to come back and their ability to play the way they do, Max Duggan, what a warrior to go through the game the way he did, to put them in a position to take the game not only to overtime but a chance to win that game. And again, as a committee, we looked at it in full body of work. A lot of respect for Kansas State in that room as well. That win kind of won the day for TCU to be the number 3 team.
Okay, what impact did avoiding a rematch of Michigan and Ohio State in the semifinals have on the discussions?
It really wasn't discussed as we went into it. Our goal was to get the top 4 teams right and make sure that we believe that, you know, Georgia number 1, Michigan number 2, TCU number 3, Ohio State number 4, for the reasons I was just talking about with regards to TCU and Ohio State. Again, our goal was to get the right 4, ultimately the right 25 as we go through this, and make sure we got them in the right order regardless of matchups and conferences and the rest of it.
Okay, so I just want to be clear. So no one in the course of this discussion ever said, let's stay away from the Michigan-Ohio State rematch, at least in the semifinals. That was never uttered in the room.
It was not talked about in the room. Again, we were looking at getting the right 4 teams. And as we went piece by piece by piece, we ended up in the order that we did with TCU 3. And again, based on the body of work over the course of the season.
What about margins of loss? In terms of TCU, their loss being in overtime, and you mentioned Ohio State was more competitive for the majority of that game against Michigan than some have given them credit for since the final score got away. How much of an impact was margin of loss for TCU losing by field goal in overtime and Ohio State losing decisively in the end?
Well, again, I think as you look at it and you're evaluating the whole game, I mean, we're not evaluating the first half or just the second half. We're looking at the totality
of the game. And as you look at that, TCU and Kansas State, kind of led down that road, if you will, with TCU coming back yet again, taking the field goal earlier in the game, makes it an 8-point game. Then they score the touchdown, get the 2-point conversion to send it into overtime. And later in the game with Ohio State, Michigan, as the game was an 8-point game, you saw Michigan pull away. And while it's, the margin was greater, it's certainly you're trying to look at the game in its entirety and then, again, push that forward into the whole body of work by the season.
All right, but one last quick question here. If Ohio State and TCU played, Ohio State would be favored. In that room, how loud was the voice that, I understand, Ohio State's better than TCU? Obviously, it didn't come out that way, but how much of a discussion was it that maybe some in the room felt like the Buckeyes were better?
Yeah, our goal in that room is to beat it around the best we can. There's 13 of us in there using our football judgment, and ultimately we want to make the right decision. So sure, people are talking about it from every side to make sure that we ultimately come to the right decision, and that decision was TCU at 3 and Ohio State at 4.
Boo, yeoman's work. We appreciate you joining us. I'm sure we'll talk to you a little bit later on in this 4-hour extravaganza once the entire rankings are released. We've got 1 through 6 up there. We'll show 7 through 25. And all of the New Year's 6 bowl matchups that you guys work on, the ones that are available to you to work on with the contracts, we'll unveil a little bit later on in the show. Boo Corrigan, thanks a lot, Boo.
Thanks for what y'all did for college football. Appreciate it.
All right, Boo's done a really good job this year. They've got Georgia at number 1. Georgia's history in the college football playoff, they played that classic game against Baker Mayfield and the Sooners, won it 54-48, double overtime, went on to play in the national championship game that season. And then Dogs looked as if they had Alabama on the rope, but then 2nd and 26, Tua to Devontae gave Alabama the national championship. The game which Jalen Hurts started and was relieved by Tua. And then last season, Georgia really, coming off a loss to Alabama in the SEC championship game, came out like Ohio State might this year with a real point to prove.
There you are.
Yeah, I'm in there watching them shoot the oranges into the bucket right there. And then Georgia went on to win the national championship by beating Alabama in the rematch. 13-0 this year. Got the season off to a great start by annihilating Oregon in the opener and then finished off LSU yesterday to win the SEC championship, first time since 2017. Pleased to be joined by the head coach of the Bulldogs and the reigning national champions, Kirby Smart. So Kirby, you now look and you see the matchup that you'll have against Ohio State. What's your initial reaction to it?
Well, I'm excited. What a great program. What a great job Ryan's done there. They got a lot of really good players because we recruit a lot of the same kids, and they've got a tremendous program. It'll be a premier matchup, which our guys love. And, when you make the Final Four, whether you're 1 through 4, it really doesn't matter. What matters is how you manage this time building up to this game and the nature of the game, because there's a lot of build-up.
A lot of build-up, and we heard from Laura Rutledge earlier that you perhaps have a message defensively. Now, look, you had the game in hand, it seemed, for a while. Some points, yards. How will you use that starting today for the rest of this time in the preparation?
Well, the message is always going to be consistent. There's things we can do better in every game. That would be no different than last night. I was really proud of our guys being resilient and playing, and we've played really good complementary football. But we can't play the defense we played last night and expect to be any kind of champions, semifinal or national championship. So we got some work to do, and our guys I know they'll be excited to get back to work.
Kirby, congrats on another SEC championship, man. I'm gonna put you in a little bit of a tough spot here. Not looking at Ohio State, but looking in the past when the SEC has played the Big Ten in games you have coached. What's been the difference in why you have come up on top more often than not?
I don't know many times that we've got an opportunity to play. I know last year, obviously, in the CFP final, and our team was in a different state of mind coming off
the Michigan State game?
The Alabama loss.
I'm saying even going back to Alabama as a defensive coordinator.
Oh, I got
Just
you. Yeah,
in
you're
general,
going way
I'm just
back.
saying, Big Ten in general against the SEC in games you've coached. What's been the difference when you got in the post game and looked at the film? Why did you win?
I think it's no different. It's not about the Big Ten and the SEC. It's about football, right? It boils down to line of scrimmage. It boils down to turnovers, explosive plays. It's not really about the two conferences in those games. You may need to make it about that, but really it's about who plays better. Because I also played and coached at Alabama when Ohio State absolutely destroyed us one CFP semifinal game. And you know what? They played better. They were more explosive, and they didn't have turnovers, and we did at Alabama. So it really boils down to how you play, not who you play.
Coach, congratulations. I was wondering, along the way, during your season, we watched you guys play some close games. Missouri was close. Kentucky was closer than people expected. Is there value in those kind of games as you go through a season and you're the #1 team in the country for a long time? Is there value in playing close games along the way?
There's value in playing close games, but there's also value in playing well. And we've had some close games, and we've had some games we played better than others. But the consistency is what we look for. And, you know, I don't think there's a conference in America that doesn't have rivalry games that somebody in the country doesn't look at and say, oh, well, they should have beat that team much worse. But when you play on the road in any conference, it's tough. Especially the Power 5 conferences. And we got a really, really quality conference down here in the SEC, and every team you play is capable of beating you. And our kids were up to the standard each and every time they got a chance.
Coach, can you talk about the impact of having a quarterback like Stetson Bennett, a guy with big game experience who's been to the playoff, won a national championship, not only played in the big games, but was MVP of some of these big games? How important is that for you? How valuable heading into this postseason in the playoff?
It's probably the #1, critical factor is your quarterback play. I say all the time that, most of these games, the way football is now, come down to the quarterback. Can he make plays? Can he make you right as an offensive coordinator when you're wrong? The decisions that he's asked to make on the RPO and who to throw the ball to, they're so critical. They almost outweigh the decisions made by the coordinators. And when you have a guy that's played and had these kind of experiences, which both teams in our game will have, experienced quarterbacks, it makes for exciting football. It makes for really good offense. But those guys determine the outcome a lot of times with their decision making.
Coach, when you look at the schedule now, what's the schedule? How do you ramp up now? Do you give the guys some time off? Like, how do you, now that you've done this a couple times, how do you look at the schedule moving forward before the game? Obviously, you got several amount of weeks before that point.
Yeah, David, that's probably the toughest part to me is that, I always look at it and it's sour grapes now because I'm so happy that we got a chance to play in the SEC championship. We got a chance to win an SEC championship. But you look and you say, okay, I'd like to give my guys a little time to recover, relax, get in shape, worry about final exams. I mean, there's so many things going on. We got official visits next weekend, but you see a team that maybe didn't play in a conference championship, and now the opportunity for those guys, they've had a week off, a week to recoup and get ready. They're going to be fresh and ready to go and ready to bounce back and start practicing. So we got to be smart about how we practice our guys, but we also got to understand it's going to be a physical game because Ohio State's a very physical team.
Kirby, we appreciate everything you do in joining us this week, and congratulations on the SEC championship, and the best of luck in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl against Ohio State. Look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it, and go Dogs.
All right, that is Kirby Smart, his team, #1 final college football playoff rankings for the first time. Michigan, Georgia's opponent in the semis last year, will be #2. Harbaugh flirted with the NFL. There were some opportunities. He came back for an 8th season as Michigan's head coach and followed up with a spectacular encore. Went back and forth in the early season between Cade McNamara, who's now entered the transfer portal, settling on J.J. McCarthy, believing that gave Michigan more upside, more explosiveness in the offense, and that really worked out. And Blake Corum was just sensational until he was injured and a knee injury, and went back-to-back wins over Ohio State. Really, Corum not being able to participate, only a couple of carries in that Ohio State game when he gave it a go. That's what the Wolverines did. Didn't have much in the non-conference after they bought their way out of a UCLA game in order to have more home games. not really challenged that often. Maryland stuck with them for a little while. Illinois was their closest shave over the course of the season. And as we've mentioned a couple of times, Wolverines put the hammer down late in the second half against Ohio State in a game in which Ohio State stuck around for a while, but Michigan showed some real mettle and largely did the same thing last night against Purdue as the Boilermakers kept threatening, and Jim Harbaugh and the Wolverines found a way to close the deal and win their second consecutive Big Ten championship. Pleased to be joined by Jim Harbaugh now. So, Jim, the difficulty in losing a number of star players, particularly on defense last year, and being able to put a team together and get back to this spot. What was that like for you this year?
It was a lot of work, and our guys compete. That's what they do week in and week out, and really proud, just really proud of our team, especially last night again. Great team win. It's a tough psychology to overcome, and our guys did it, and they're doing it with work and through competition.
Jim, the anticipation this morning and really starting last night was whether Michigan would play Ohio State again or whether they ultimately are matched up against TCU. What were your thoughts on that leading up over the last few hours?
This thought was on the ball game. We treated it as the biggest game in the world to us last night, as we did the week before, and we'll treat the next one the same way. But as far as psychology or anything like that, it's just about the game to us. And we'll go back to work right now, get ready for a tough TCU team. Couldn't be more impressed with them, watching them throughout the season and yesterday's ball game. That quarterback, I mean, was unbelievable in terms of a competitor. And we got a good one ourselves, too, so it should be a heck of a matchup.
Hey, Coach, it's Kirk. Congrats on another Big Ten championship and a great performance last night. This football team, early in the year, Reese just talked about Cade McNamara returns, J.J. McCarthy has the potential. You kind of felt it out early, made it probably a difficult decision, and now J.J. has become such a fixture and has had such a great year. You just talk about his growth and where he is now as a Big Ten champion, and you get ready for this postseason with him at the helm.
Yeah, sure. We love all our players. Cade McNamara, tremendous player. J.J. McCarthy's his growth. He's been so good since he's been here in every single way. The thing I haven't seen is him ever get nervous. You know, Kirk, and I know what you know what that's like as a quarterback. There's a lot of times I had the butterflies and things, but I have never seen this kid rattled, shaken, nervous in any way, shape, or form. It's just been phenomenal. He's absolutely 13 wins, 13-0, first year as a starter. Can't say enough great things about J.J. McCarthy and the kind of season he's had.
It's all the meditation he's doing in the end zone before the games, Coach. This guy's getting in his flow. He's so zen. I wanted to go back to the off season. Obviously,
yeah, people told us about that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
People told us about visualization.
Somehow it works. That's right. Yeah, just.
I wish I'd have listened more to that advice from my coach, Bo Schembechler.
He's manifesting success on the field. Coach, in the offseason, obviously you had lost both coordinators. You lost the number 2 overall pick to the NFL draft, but you were asked about your team. You said they have the chance to be scary good. What was it that you saw in the offseason that gave you so much confidence for this club moving forward this year?
Yeah, just the momentum of the I guess people call it cultural momentum from last season to this season, but it's transcended that. It's a brotherhood. Culture's great. I mean, that's show up on time, do the things you're supposed to do, but this team has transcended that. Players, coaches, staff, love, perseverance, and a lot of hard work, a lot of competition. It's just been best way to describe it is as a brotherhood.
Coach, is there something different about this year's team as opposed to last year's team? When you're on this interview, I see you smiling. When Gene Wojciechowski was talking, the players are dancing with the trophy. It feels like this team has a different confidence and a different feel than we've seen in the past.
I don't know about that. I think it's a team that really works and competes, and I think they understand if you want to have good things happen, you got to work for them. You got to compete for them, and this team sure is about it. They're about the work, and they enjoy it. They enjoy the work. They embrace it, and I think that's where it comes from.
Hey, Coach, you got experience last year, going to the college football playoff. How much does that help your team and coaches? Just you feeling it last year, knowing the time, how to set the schedule, all that stuff. How does that help you this year?
I'm sure it does. I'm sure there's ways. I don't quite have that list in front of me of how many ways it does help. But I think the main thing is just understanding you got to work, you got to compete if you want good things to happen.
You certainly did that well. Jim, congratulations. First time Michigan's won back-to-back outright Big Ten titles in 30 years. Look forward to seeing you in the playoff against TCU. Thanks for joining us.
All right, appreciate you having me on.
All right, there's Jim Harbaugh. Harbaugh will face only the second team to go from unranked in the preseason into the college football playoff in TCU. The first team to do that was Michigan last year.
Notice how the players weren't playing with the trophy?
Yeah.
Taking bites out of the football
the one thing he slipped in there was Bo Schembechler and talking about getting Zen. I don't know if I see that or not.
I know. But one thing, Bo, you say is the team, and that's been really evident, especially the second half of this season. And to me, this is a football team that, David, you mentioned the experience that they had last year. I think there was a celebration when they won against Ohio State. They got enough to get through Iowa. And then I think, I'm not saying they showed up. They showed up to compete. But I think there's a different energy and a different focus to the finish line with this year's team after last year coming up short.
I think it definitely matters. That experience matters. But that's probably the last time we'll get Harbaugh.
Oh, no, he's
talk.
been great.
No, to just talk, because every other time is going to be, talk to this guy, talk to the teammate, talk to them. Like, that's the last time we'll probably get pointed answers from Jim that doesn't involve, go talk to Edwards. Go talk to J.J. McCarthy. He's always about putting his guys out there.
We've asked several times over the course of the season for this sit down, that sit down with Jim. He always respectfully declines. But on this day, he's great. Every year he answers the questions. He's
back to business.
He's quintessential Harbaugh. He's got to like that, and it certainly worked well for the Wolverines as they go to the playoff for the second time. They'll play 4 o'clock Eastern in the Fiesta Bowl on New Year's Eve. Ryan Day, Sonny Dykes, when you come back.
The Ohio State Buckeyes are the first national champions. Clemson Tigers, new kings of college football. Alabama wins! Another building block in this dynasty.
Ohio State Buckeyes.
An amazing grab!
Ryan Day.
This is why you came to Ohio State.
CJ Stroud.
Ring it up for Ohio State.
Welcome back to the College Football Playoff.
Ohio State started the season. Many believe this could be a generationally good Buckeye team, and maybe it will prove to be that. They got off to a strong start after being tested by Notre Dame at home in week 1. Defense stepped up throughout. Offense played much better in the second half with a 21-10 win, and then the offense just absolutely went off. Second in the nation in scoring offense. Top 15 in scoring defense as the Buckeyes proved to be more than just a one-dimensional team. But on that Saturday in Columbus, so much riding on the line, gave up a lot of big plays to Michigan, which was a little bit uncharacteristic for the Wolverines. Certainly had been for Ohio State as well, as Michigan won for the second straight year, and all seemed lost for a while on the banks of the Olentangy until fate smiled on them. USC lost, and TCU ended up getting upset. Really, it was the USC loss in the Pac-12 championship game that opened the door for Ohio State. One-loss team, very few of those among the at-large pool. Them and TCU were the only two in the end. And the Buckeyes are in the playoff where they will face Georgia in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl on New Year's Eve night. Ryan Day, head coach of the Buckeyes, joins us now. Ryan, how would you describe, we talked on Saturday morning on College Game Day, and you talked about how there was a little buzz going on. When you heard your name called, how would you describe the emotions that have changed from last week to this week and knowing that you've got another shot?
Yeah, hard to explain, all the range of emotions that have gone on here over the last, 7 days. But when we saw our name go up there on the board and know that we're going to have an opportunity to play I said it before, it's like a second lease on life. A couple days ago, we were on life support a little bit, our season was, and now, there's a 2-game season ahead of us. And so there's unbelievable excitement right now. Guys were just bouncing around the facility. We had a team meeting right before that, and there's a lot of excitement right now.
I'm sure that in some quarters, probably particularly among fans, they would have liked another shot at Michigan. But now you're facing the reigning national champions. What's your initial reaction to getting a shot at Georgia right in their backyard?
Well, life is all about opportunity, and what an unbelievable opportunity this is. Going down to Atlanta, playing the national champs. Kirby's done an unbelievable job again this year. But this is all going to be about taking advantage of this opportunity and who works harder over the next month. The coaches, the players, just maximizing every day, practicing really well, and preparing to play in this game. Because now we're back in control of our destiny. We weren't. And that was the hardest thing going into this past weekend. But now we're back in control of our destiny.
Coach, congratulations. A lot of people wondering if Jackson Smith-Njigba has any chance whatsoever to play in this game. We haven't seen him in a while. We know he's been a little banged up. Is he still working to get healthy and hopefully play in a game like this?
We'll probably have more of an update here over the next couple of days on exactly where that's at.
Coach, can you describe the mindset of your defense heading into this next game against Georgia? Obviously, we talked about how there's been so much improvement over the course of the year under new defensive coordinator Jim Knowles versus what we've seen in years past. And then the last time out, obviously giving up 45 to Michigan, a lot of explosive plays. What's their mindset heading into this game?
Well, we still have a month of work, but I can tell you coming off of the game, it was the big plays. There was just a lot of good football that was played in that game, but when you give up big plays like that, it doesn't matter. And so, there was a lot of work done in terms of the film room, identifying, the issues that were going on during the week. And one thing that we talked about was we spent last week, focusing on the opportunity to play in the CFP. And if this opportunity was here, don't be surprised on Sunday afternoon if your name's up on that board. And so we did that. We went in, we had 2 really good days of practice, and then got after the film. But certainly, as you guys know, it was the big plays, it was the explosive plays that hurt us.
Hey, Coach, just the format itself. I mean, you've done this a number of times. You understand what it takes. You just talked about the potential of playing in this game, and already you guys are at practice. Now that you know it's a lock and go, how do you envision these next few weeks to try to get your team to peak emotionally and physically on the 31st?
Well, yeah, this is our third trip to the CFP in the last 4 years. And so there's still a group of guys, in that locker room that know what this is like. And I think we have a really good formula for preparing for the game. It starts off, we have 3 different phases that we get into, fundamentals, game plan, and then at the bowl site itself. But I just think it's going to be how well do we maximize every single day and just attack over the next month. Because, you come out of a game like we did at the end of the season and there's some regret that we don't win the game. Well, now the goal is to have no regret going into this game. Playing loose, playing fast, playing aggressive, having a great month of preparation so we play with great confidence.
Yeah, and Coach, you say, regret, all that stuff when talking about the last game. You talked about on the show the other day on game day, you talked about being aggressive, like letting it rip, cutting it loose. How do you instill that mindset over the next, forget playing not to lose, like playing to win and taking shots and being aggressive? How do you instill that in these guys and you get that back offensively?
That's who we are, and that's what we've always been. You guys have seen us play here. And that's our identity. And so that's the way we're going to go into this week of preparation. And that's the way we play anyways. And I think our guys, after, kind of having things taken away over the last week and feeling like, again, our season was on life support, now that there's life back into us. And there's a new perspective going into this preparation. So that's the way we play the game anyways. But I think it's going to be something that we focus on and really make sure we prepare ourselves to do.
Ryan, congratulations on making it back to the playoff. Wish you well against Georgia. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that is Ryan Day taking his team back to the college football playoff. TCU be playing Michigan. They got the 3rd seed. It was a year ago that Sonny Dykes just moved across town from SMU to become head coach at the Skillet rival. And man, what a transformation he has led the Frogs on. They were the comeback. They had 7 comeback wins this year. That's tied for the most in college football. They had more when they trailed in the second half than anyone else. Almost pulled off another fourth quarter comeback against Kansas State yesterday. They were down double figures, got the game into overtime on a heroic effort from Max Duggan that came up just an inch short. Kansas State wins the Big 12 on a walk-off field goal, and with TCU and Ohio State both being in the field, and kind of exclude Notre Dame from this with the exception of the year they played the ACC, we'll have two teams who are not conference champions that are in the college football playoff in the field of four. And you see how well TCU has done. Started this season with Chandler Morris at quarterback, banged up against Colorado. Max Duggan came in and became a Heisman Trophy candidate with a brilliant season in the Sonny Dykes offense. And we're pleased to be joined by the head coach of the Horned Frogs. Sonny, I told a story that I read this week, yesterday on College Game Day, that your old friend Todd Graham came in, looked at your team, and said, you're going to win the Big 12. Did anybody tell you in your first year you were going to go to the college football playoff?
Reese, I think I lost you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just said, you got me now, Sonny?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, great. I was saying that I told a story on College Game Day yesterday, something that I'd read. Your old pal Todd Graham, former head coach at Arizona State and some other places, came in and evaluated your team and said you were going to go, you were going to win the Big 12. Did anyone tell you in the preseason that you were going to go to the playoff?
No, unfortunately, nobody did. Yeah, it's funny. I had Todd come out and take a look at a couple days of practice, and walked away and said, man, you guys have a good football team, and the guys are hungry and well coached. And a lot of the things that I saw, I think he saw as well. And we felt like we had an opportunity to have a good football team and a team that could, compete. And we just gained confidence every week. And I think that, to me, was what made this team special, was we just a little bit more confidence every week. We felt like we could play well. We were able to come back and win some ball games, and took a lot of confidence from that as well. And man, it's been a fun team to coach. These guys love each other, play hard for each other, and I'm just excited that we get this opportunity. We lost a tough game last night, and that one stung, but now we get to go to work and compete against a great Michigan team, and our guys are fired up about it.
Sonny, I know that you believe you were a playoff team. All of us here believed you were a playoff team. There's still a little bit, there were some scars left among the TCU faithful from the first year of the playoff, 2014, when they were passed over. There's often a feeling that TCU's overlooked. How were the nerves in terms of waiting to see whether you would be in this playoff?
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Last night was tough, and we wanted to play our way in. We felt like if we went 13-0 and won the Big 12 championship, that we felt good about our chances of making it. We lost such a tough game last night, in a game that we felt like obviously we had opportunities to win. We just couldn't quite make enough plays down the stretch. But, I had faith in the committee. I really did. I mean, I have a tremendous appreciation for the work that those guys put in, the time they spend, the way they study football. And, we felt like that moving up to 3, that we felt like they respected TCU, they respected our conference, they respected our competition that we played against year in, year out. And I think that we passed the smell test. I really do believe that. I mean, you look at our schedule, the games that we played against top 25 competition, we felt like we were a team that was very well positioned. But you never know until you know, and I'm just excited that they thought we were worthy of participating in this tournament, because our guys are going to go out and prepare well and play our best, and we have a ton of confidence that we can compete. So we're just very appreciative and excited and can't wait for the opportunity.
Hey, Sonny, it's Kirk. Maybe you could give Max Duggan a collective hug from all of college football fans around America. I don't know I've seen an effort or a performance like that from a guy who just gutted his team back into having a chance to win that game. What was he like after that game for you?
Yeah, he was disappointed. A lot of our guys were disappointed, and Max just gives so much, really every day. And I think the world gets to see it on Saturday. We get to see it 7 days a week. There's nobody that's more invested, cares more about his teammates and the program than Max does. And I mean, what he did last night was special. As a coach, you're trying to figure out how to manage the game and make decisions, and you try to stay in the moment. But it was hard not to just sit back and appreciate what he did last night. I mean, it was pretty remarkable. It was something quite frankly I'd never seen before, where a guy just wills the team back into the game. We wish we could have finished it. It would have been certainly a tremendous credit to Max and our team to be able to finish it. But man, what a performance! And I just felt like, as a fan of college football, it was just something to behold, and just a special moment for him and our program as well.
It was a super cool moment. Coach, when we've talked about your squad all year long, we talk about all the weapons, we talk about Miller, and we talk about Johnston, we talk about Duggan, we talk about all those guys. For a large percent of the season, we were talking about your defense. How has the defense come together, changed, improved, gotten a lot better down the stretch of this football season?
Yeah, I think that's been the key for us to get in this opportunity. Look, you're not gonna make the college football playoff unless you're playing big time defense. And we're still learning. Our guys are still growing. We're pretty young defensively. We've got some guys that have played a lot of snaps, but we're also young in some pretty key spots, and some newcomers that have come in and contributed. So, for us, continuing to get better, and the confidence that comes from that, I think just drives us and makes us better day in, day out. At the same time, I think that we didn't play as well as we wanted to last night. Had some busts and some things that were a little bit uncharacteristic. But our guys are excited to go and get that bad taste out of their mouth, and to work and to fix our problems, and to address the issues that we had last night. So I'm fired up about the way our guys are improving, and we look forward to a big challenge. I mean, Michigan's obviously a very explosive football team. Had a chance to watch them a little bit last night. Was very impressed with their quarterback, their skill, and in particular their offensive line. So will be a big challenge for us, but again, our guys are going to continue to improve, and look forward to the challenge.
Coach, it's been one of the great stories this year watching you guys play, and obviously you're there in your first year. You're constantly trying to establish trust with your players and create familiarity. Your team has had to overcome a lot, whether it's been injuries to key players like Quentin Johnson at wide receiver, coming back in a lot of different games. What was one moment early this year that you knew that you had something special with this team?
Yeah, for me, I think we got off to a really fast start against Oklahoma, and played a really good first half of football, offensively, defensively, and really on special teams as well. I expected to go in the locker room at halftime and see guys celebrating and carrying on and all that. And I walked into a room full of young people that had kind of organized themselves and sat down, and not one person was celebrating and saying, the guys were saying all the right things. Hey, look, we got to finish. We got to go out there in the second half. And that to me was when, you started to say, okay, look, this team is different. This team understands the importance of preparation, understands the importance of being in the moment. Has the ability to move past success and move past failure. And I think for us as a coaching staff, I walked back into the coaches, and we were having our meeting. I was going to address the team and just say, hey, look, settle down, guys. And I didn't have to. I walked back into our coaches and I said, hey, guys, we might have something special with this group. I mean, these guys know how to handle it, and just a real credit to them and their maturity, and again, their confidence and belief in each other that they could compete at the very highest level.
Coach, how are the emotions for you and your team? You go through a tough game last night. One of your goals slips away. You don't get a chance to win the Big 12 championship. And then 12 hours later, now you're sitting in this position, coming into the playoff, getting all the respect that you guys have earned and deserved all season long. And now we're right back to business. How emotionally tough has that been for you and your team?
Yeah, the last 24 hours has been tough. That was a gut punch last night. Our guys played so hard. We worked ourselves back into the game. We made a bunch of mistakes, and that's been something that we haven't done much this year. We played pretty clean football, and we were a little bit uncharacteristic last night. Too many turnovers, some key penalties, some situations that we didn't handle probably as well as we should have. And so it's tough. I mean, we had a locker room full of emotional young people, and our coaches were the same way. And then we had to come show up this morning and and prepare ourselves for the worst. And so it's been emotional. It's been tough. Thankfully, we'll meet with our players this afternoon, talk a little bit about our schedule moving forward, and I think everybody's relieved. I think we're relieved. We're excited. We believe that we belong. There's no question about it. And but you got to go out and earn it. I mean, that's the thing about college football, and that's what makes it special. Is you got to go out there. You have to earn that respect every single week, and We don't want anybody to give it to us. We want to earn it, and that's what's been fun about this group.
Sonny, congratulations on making the playoff field, and I know you're going to say all the right things about Michigan, and Michigan's dealt with a lot of things. They have no idea what's coming when that hypnotoad shows up in the desert later on. Wolverines better watch out. Here comes Hypnotoad.
Hey, that guy yesterday on game day.
There's Sonny Dykes joining us. We appreciate that. Sonny's done a great job.
He was intense, man.
That guy
story.
I go get it. Yeah. Come on, Dish, get that camera over there.
Imagine at the start of the year, someone had come to you and said, hey, there's going to be a team that was under 500 a year ago. They've got a first-year head coach. They're going to have a quarterback come off the bench because they're backup early in the year, and they're going to make the college football playoff.
Right.
We said no way. It's been an incredible story for TCU.
I mean, what's the big surprise? They were picked 7th in the preseason.
But also
in the Big 12. You know,
it's more than that because of the comebacks. You know, it's think about how many times they were trilling how easy in a first year with a new culture you could just give up. And time after time they answered the bell. I mean, now you get to the end of the year. They didn't get it done yesterday. But I think they believe in their new coach. They believe in their new coordinators. They believe they can win games.
It's great to see everyone else start to believe in him also.
Yeah.
It was like a fight for respect along this way.
By the way,
because of some of those tough things they went through.
Joe, you're
and it
dead
feels
on.
like finally, it's like now you are respected. Like and keeping them at number 3, I think goes a long way with that also.
And the other thing is this thing has staying power. This is not a 1 year, that was a cute story, goodbye. They have like 17 guys coming back next year, so they're in good shape.
Yeah, and you know what? I know I've been on an island on a lot of this, and we put to bed all the stuff that the committee doesn't watch games. They don't know. They only care about the brand names. That's a bunch of.
That's Pollock.
That's a bunch.
Don't say it.
That's a bunch of. That's a bunch of.
They listen to Herbie and watch games. That's always his thing.
And we're going to hear from Nick Saban, just on the outside looking in, coming in. He'll be with us in a bit. So too, Chris Fowler. We'll see you in a minute.
All right.
Georgia Bulldogs.
Keep shopping and do what we do.
TCU Horned Frogs. Michigan Wolverines.
Job's not finished. Go blue.
Ohio State Buckeyes.
This is why you came to Ohio State.
Welcome to the college football playoff.
Almost had me down, came back to life.
This is the College Football Playoff Selection Show, presented by AT&T 5G.
Kirby Smart.
You take that helmet and you strike them.
Jim Harbaugh.
As hard as we can, as fast as we can.
Sonny Dykes.
Do your job for 60 minutes.
Ryan Day.
This is why you came to Ohio State.
Welcome to the college football playoff.
Those are the 4 teams in Georgia against Ohio State, Michigan, and TCU. We have sub Greg McElroy for Kirk Herbstreit.
Herbie grew a beard. Looking good.
Younger, better looking, all that stuff.
Good to have you with us. Greg's with us for the rest of the afternoon, 4 o'clock Eastern Time, as we will later on unveil the rest of the rankings, 7 through 25, and also give you the New Year's Six Bowl matchups. Pleased to be joined now by Chris Fowler, who will call the national championship game in a selected semifinal, which I sort of imagine will be Georgia and Ohio State in the Peach Bowl. We couldn't get Herbie to fess up. By the way, Chris, he said to say hello. What's your reaction to the rankings and the notion that TCU stayed at 3 and Ohio State got into the field at 4?
Georgia has ever played Ohio State in football without a search engine, because it was Kirk Herbstreit and Robert Smith against Garrison Hurst and Eric Zier in the '93 Citrus Bowl. Bulldogs edged the Buckeyes. That's the only previous meeting. So you've got 2 really fresh matchups, because TCU and Michigan have never met in the field. So I'm looking forward to the semifinals, and I think there's a chance we'll be in Atlanta. And by the way, Kirby Smart can say seedings don't matter. They're playing in that building for the 3rd time, right? Game 1 and game 13. So they scored, 99 points combined against Oregon and LSU. Slight edge. Seeding does matter in that game. I think they got the top 4 right. I'm just glad they didn't listen to the arguments that Vegas should play a role in determining the 4 teams, because Bama was favored over Tennessee by more than a touchdown, a couple touchdowns against LSU. Ohio State was favored by, I think, 9 over Michigan. Let's leave Vegas aside, and let's not worry about the eye test either. If you're going to have the eye test be the decisive factor and not just break a tie, than just put the same teams in every year based on talent and recruiting. But they got it right, in my opinion.
So what about in the other matchup that you're not likely to call, though, as we've just found out, Michigan and TCU? We talked a little bit about the notion that, I'd said earlier that I've had it with the committee doesn't watch games, they only respect the big brands, blah, blah, blah. TCU lost and held their spot. What does that tell you about the committee?
Yeah, it tells you that they have integrity and that this brand bias thing, which is thrown around very loosely and very often, doesn't really hold water. I understand why TCU fans had some anxiety after that narrow loss. They do remember 14, dropping from 3 to 6 after a win. That's never going to be forgotten in the Big 12. But they got a championship game now, and they lost it, and it still didn't punish TCU. I think TCU plays in a much better league than most fans out there realize. The committee knows how balanced the Big 12 is. There's not, the flotsam and jetsam, to use a Miami phrase, I'm down here, at the bottom of the league. Every team is tough. Even Kansas, which used to be that team, can play football. So TCU navigated through that, undefeated in the regular season, and lost by about that much in the championship game, and the committee understood that.
All right, Chris, look forward to hearing from you throughout this playoff season. Also, maybe later on in the show if we can get you to stick around. But who knows? I mean, your guy Herb Street just bolted out here after an hour. Now here you go.
Miami Beach on a Sunday. You can't miss that,
Reese. I apologize. I'm wearing shorts under this desk. I have a bike ride along a beachside path. I'm going right past Jesse's building later on this afternoon. But I am recording this. I will wait to hear what you guys say about the Myrtle Beach Bowl and all the other ones. But it's been a pleasure to join you.
Please do not stand up, whatever you do. Chris Fowler. Greg, we looked at this. I don't think anybody. I differ with Chris a little bit in terms of. Not that you should look at Vegas, but you do have to employ some football judgment. In my estimation, I would have had Ohio State third. And I think it gives Georgia a little bit of a tough draw because at least from a talent standpoint, which does matter, they're dealing with some bigger, stronger bodies than they might have over the course of the game.
Yeah, I think the one thing that was interesting, I mean, you lose a game, you don't drop. You're not penalized at all. And it was a weird roundabout way in which, yes, while TCU, yes, a loss is always going to hurt you as far as how you're perceived about your resume. But in a roundabout way, it actually in some ways helped them too because it actually strengthened their best win. So I almost think it cancels out the loss. Their best win, of course, against Kansas State back in October. That now is looking even a little bit better than it did going into the weekend. So I think that's part of the reason why people are having a hard time. Like, well, hang on, you lose, you drop. No, not in this particular case because they already took care of business against the Wildcats a few weeks earlier.
Yeah, I could have made a case for them dropping, though. I mean, I'm with you on that.
Me too.
I just, again, we're going to have people come on. They're going to say they lost by 6 inches. They lost by an elbow. They also won a bunch of close games that were really, really close that they could have lost too. And the committee had a lot more respect for Ohio State when they both had zeros in the loss column before that. Ohio State better wins probably on their schedule than TCU. I know the depth. I think the depth of the schedule is better in the Big 12. I think both are good teams. But I do think that it was you could have made a case for putting Ohio State at 3, and I would have been okay with it. TCU at 3,
and I'm fine with the way it is too.
But what you said about Reese or Kirk is very important, or Fowler, excuse me, is very important. The eye test has to come involved because it gets to a point where the resumes are very similar, and I have to make a decision on what I place an importance on. Do I see enough from this team to think they're better than another team? So there is an eye test that definitely comes into it.
You have to do it, or else we go back to the BCS formula, which has really been an interesting study over the course of this season, is that people are saying, there should be a formula. What about the criteria? And I'm like, you guys hated that.
The committees don't know ball.
Yeah, I know it. And so you have to employ some of it, and in this case, it carried the day that TCU held its spot. Let's bring Chris Felique in here because I hear the dulcet tones of the Bear in my ear right now. Bear, we got Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU. Let's play. Are the lines out, or are we playing guess the line right now? Do you want us to guess?
I want you to guess. But you know what else everybody hated? Everybody else hated like when the same 4 teams are in, and now yesterday and today, like TCU could be a new team in, but then everybody still wanted Alabama because they're better. So like, pick a lane and stay in it. But I know Fowler mentioned how he doesn't want to get Vegas involved, but I'm going to get Vegas involved. I'm going to play guess the lines with you. So the lines are out. Georgia versus Ohio State. What do you think?
7.
I'm going to go, playing in Atlanta, I'm going to go 11 and a hook.
Wow, that's big.
Wow.
Yeah, that's big.
I'm going big.
Wow. I was thinking
Some
7.
Ohio State
I was
bettors
thinking
probably
7
want that
also.
number.
7.
I was thinking 7 points.
I think probably 7.5. I think they'll give away that football hook. I don't know.
That's exactly what I was going to guess, but just to be a little different, I'll give them a little bit more and say 8.5. What do you got, Bear?
All right, well, we'll give you the answer in a minute because we're going to have you guess the line of the other semifinal, Michigan and TCU. This one's moved, by the way, from the opener. It opened at one number, and now it's up to something else.
It moved in 10 minutes?
It moved quickly, yes.
I got 10.
Oh, wow.
What, Michigan minus 10?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm going Michigan minus 5.5.
I was just going to say 5.5.
Yeah.
But to be different, I'll say 4.5.
I'm going to say 9.5.
Ooh.
I'm gonna be consistent then. I'm going to say Michigan minus 8.5.
There are a couple of really good guesses and a couple of really bad ones. But you guys pretty much nailed the first game. Georgia opened minus 7 against Ohio State. There's a couple of 6.5s out there too, but they opened 7, and then Michigan opened at 9, and Michigan's actually been bet up to 9.5 since then. So whoever had Ohio State, Georgia like 11.5 there, I think you get some good value. You know what the interesting thing is here? If you look at the numbers, how you have 1 a smaller favorite over 4 than 2 is over 3, it kind of gives a perception that maybe Ohio State should have been 3, and maybe they did kind of say we don't want a rematch even though the power ratings disagree. So Georgia kind of loses out a little bit because they would have been a big double-digit favorite over TCU or Ohio State. Now they probably get the toughest possible matchup that they could get in the semifinal. But a great game.
It is, and both games are going to be really entertaining. How do the power ratings stack up among those 4? How do they rank? Is it?
Well, Georgia would be favored over anybody, and then Alabama is actually number 2 in the power ratings, which is why I think Chris was alluding to we can't just have the Vegas power ratings be the judgment of 1, 2, 3, 4. So Georgia would be 1, Alabama would be 2, Ohio State would be 3, and TCU would be 4. Michigan will be 4.
I think it's really interesting, and it kind of shows the mindset going into the playoff this year that might be different from past years. Obviously, Georgia and Michigan, they go out, they take care of business in the conference championship games, and they try to ride that momentum now into the semifinal. But you got a team like TCU that loses in a conference championship game, and then Ohio State that lost a rivalry game. You're not used to seeing a lot of that going into a semifinal. So now those teams, they have to turn the page.
Yeah.
And they got to get that swagger back somehow. That's a lot of time, 28 days, where doubt starts to creep in. Are we really as good as we thought we were before this game? We're obviously huge dogs now in these games. You know,
I think it can be a big motivation. I think it's a big motivation too.
I was thinking the other
Georgia
way, too.
last year.
Well,
got beat by Alabama, and you got a chance to stew on it. And they talked about conditioning and being ticked off.
And then they were favored against Alabama in the championship
Correct.
game.
So I think it can work both ways. It's a fine line.
Yeah, and it's a unique situation.
3 times previously, the team has gone into the playoff coming off a loss. 2 of those 3 times, that team won the national championship.
Book it. You heard it. Reese said Ohio State for the national championship.
I think TCU. I think he takes TCU. I think it's TCU.
No, he took Ohio State. I heard him.
And now he's on the
Could be
brand
TCU.
bias bandwagon thing. I think he's giving us a little tell here.
No, I think what you have here, you also have 2 teams coming off a loss in the same playoff for the first time.
Right.
So you got a little bit of both. Cast of thousands throughout this 4-hour extravaganza with you until 4 o'clock Eastern Time. We're going to show you the rest of the rankings, all the New Year's Six Bowl matchups. And Matt Berry, Dan Mullen, Robert Griffin III.
Kill it,
we'll hear
boy.
from them coming up. It's V Week at ESPN. We partner with the V Foundation for Cancer Research to highlight the urgent need for that research. Game-changing research can help save lives. You can join the fight against cancer by visiting v.org/donate. Every penny of your donation goes directly to cancer research. If you can help, we would be sincerely grateful. Countdown to the college football playoff national championship. We've mentioned this a couple of times. The largest regular season losses by an eventual playoff team. Notre Dame had the biggest one the year they participated in the ACC. It beaten Clemson earlier, but lost the rematch in the ACC championship game by 24. Georgia also avenged its loss in the conference championship game against Auburn in 2017. Now we'll see if Ohio State can follow suit as they lost by 22 in their regular season finale against Michigan, as we join Matt Berry, Dan Mullen, and Robert Griffin III.
Reese, good afternoon. Thank you. Welcome back into the college football playoff penthouse. It's good to be back up here year two. Robert Griffin III was up in the penthouse with me last year. Dan Mullen, you passed the background check. Thanks for coming up.
First time up here in the high roller.
Feels
good, right?
You paid your HOAs. You're in. You're ready. We're going to talk CFP. Gentlemen, first thoughts. We haven't heard your reactions. We kind of knew coming in what they were going to be, but it's now officially on paper. Your thoughts on the committee and the job?
Well, I'm very happy they got it right, putting, I think, TCU at 3. And in today's college football, not punishing a team for playing an extra game, rewarding teams for winning, rewarding teams for success, not the brand name. Because I think we talked about it. If you had switched some of the names at the top, boy, there would be outrage. If you just switch an Alabama's name with an Ohio State's name with TCU, lost an undefeated team playing in the conference championship game, lost in overtime by 3, well, they could never even drop. That couldn't be a deal. So I think they got it right. I love the matchups. I think for college football, and as a college football fan, I'm excited to see these games.
Yeah, and to your point about TCU and Ohio State, just look at their resumes. TCU 4-1 against top 25 ranked opponents. Ohio State 2-1. Look at the way they lost their last game. TCU lost their last game in overtime by a field goal, whereas Ohio State got dragged at home late in the game by Michigan. But I just think we got to get the energy up in here a little bit, right? This should be a day of celebration. This college football playoff is set up perfectly. You have the reigning champs in Georgia going out trying to redeem themselves. I mean, trying to repeat. You've got Michigan trying to redeem themselves after getting embarrassed last year. TCU, I mean, you can call it
best story in college football.
The best story in all of college football. The comeback kids, the Horned Frogs or the Horned Lizards, if you know, you know. And these guys are football playing, cool jersey wearing, Baylor heartbreaking, Texas saw often. Oklahoma stomping. I mean, this TCU team is special. Max Duggan has been incredible. And then Ohio State, they have all the weapons they possibly could imagine, if they all play, to go out and beat a Georgia team that's been dominant.
Sonny Dykes, first-year head coach, taking over for a legend in Gary Patterson, inherits a team that had some skill. Max Duggan starts the year not the starter. Now he could be a finalist for the Heisman Trophy. It all sets up perfectly for good storylines. You're talking about redemption from Michigan. The ultimate redemption for them would be a matchup against Georgia in the national championship. But one thing I want to discuss, because we talk about strength of schedule and the body of work. When you look at the Big Ten as a whole, if we're being fair now, it's Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, that's it. Yet that conference got 2 of the 4 teams in the college football playoff.
But those teams took care of their business. Michigan, you know what? You looked early in the season, and I thought early in the year, boy, Michigan's got a great chance because the schedule looks perfect. The scheduling has a lot to do with it and how it sets up. Ohio State, they had to play. They went out and played a Notre Dame in their non-conference. They took care of their business, did what they needed to do. And there's all the arguments about the other leagues. Alabama, Tennessee, Clemson, everybody had opportunities to take care of their business, and they didn't. And that's the difference of the Big Ten. They could have easily slipped up. They didn't along the way. There's a lot of arguments. It's going to be exciting to see in the years to come how college football changes. But I can't wait. The Ohio State-Georgia matchup is really interesting because I want to see what Ohio State team shows up. Because I remember the start of the season, the 3-headed monster, Travion Henderson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, right?
Imagine if he shows up in this game.
Well,
he hadn't played.
That's the whole deal with C.J. Stroud. And then the season goes on, and they're not the stars. So they potentially have these superstars that could show up for this game and show out in this game and see the team that they really thought they had back in the summer.
You know what team really that hasn't been discussed a lot that affected this whole thing? Shane Beamer in South Carolina. Think about South Carolina. If they don't beat Tennessee or if they don't beat Clemson, we're having a completely different conversation about who the 4 teams are today.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler showed up in those 2 games looking like the player that was highly recruited. But Tennessee would definitely be in if they didn't lose that game to South Carolina. And, of course, Clemson with Dabo Swinney would also be in consideration there. But back to your point, Coach, about Ohio State. When you play Georgia, you have to have special guys show up and make special plays. They have those guys on the roster. It's just a matter of if they're going to be able to play. They just had a linebacker playing running back for him, Chip Trayanum, who was a linebacker but moved to running back, although he was a running back when he first transferred in there. They've been so banged up. If they get healthy over the course of the next 3 weeks, it could be fireworks against Georgia.
28, 29 days to get healthy, and if you want to do star power for the CFP semifinals, it is Georgia-Ohio State out there, 8 p.m. Eastern in Atlanta. It's going to be a fun watch. We cannot wait to catch you down. We got to wait 28 days, but it's worth it. The bracket is complete. Who advances? CFP Selection Show continues. We'll hear from Nick Saban coming up after this.
And the drought is over. Georgia on the mountaintop. Alabama back on top. LSU sits on the throne. The Tigers reclaim their crown. We conquered a mountain that ain't ever been conquered.
Welcome back to the College Football Playoff Selection Show, presented by AT&T 5G.
Capital One Bowl Mania is back. Pick the bowl game winners, chance to win $1 million. You can create a group, join a group, get all your friends and relatives to make your picks now. ESPN.com/BowlMania. McElroy's already talking about how he knows how to make tons of money on the college football playoff semifinals. Taking one of the Capital One fan vote of these 3 teams, which one deserves to be left out of the playoff? It's pretty easy. Alabama nearly 70% of the vote, as you might have anticipated. The Crimson Tide did their best effort in terms of lobbying to get into the playoff field and certainly have some metrics in their favor. They're the only team being considered in the top 10 in strength of schedule, but they had a number of close calls. Started the season 6-0, but Texas A&M, those victories by a combined 5 points, late field goal at Texas, and then a goal line stand against a hapless Texas A&M team. Then they went to Tennessee, missed a field goal late. Tennessee hit the walk-off field goal to snap a 15-game losing streak against Alabama. And Alabama then, in overtime, gave up a 2-point conversion to LSU and lost by a single. Nick Saban spoke with Marty Smith not long ago.
Coach, first let's start with the committee's decision. They decide you guys were not going to be in the 2022 college football playoff. What's your reaction to that?
Well, we're obviously disappointed. We wanted to see our team have an opportunity to play and get in the playoffs. But, we're going to get an opportunity to play someone somewhere in a good game, and that's going to be an opportunity for our players to create value for themselves and show what kind of team we really have.
When you've built a national championship standard here, and this is sort of the context of this season, what is the opportunity for growth for the program in a bowl game like this?
Well, I think you learn a lot sometimes with disappointment, how you respond to it. There's always an opportunity in any adversity that you have to face. We obviously faced, quite a bit this year, in the middle of the season. And I think the players responded to it well, and this is going to be another opportunity for them looking forward to be able to respond in a positive way and build on the future.
I know you're going to speak with your team later today. What will your message be?
Well, I just think it comes down to, trying to establish the kind of respect that we'd like to have for this team and what we did and didn't accomplish, what we did and didn't do. But what we do in the future, what we do moving forward, is going to determine that to a large degree.
I know that when teams don't make the playoffs, sometimes that impacts your roster availability. What impact do you think that might have?
I can't really speculate on that. I'm hopeful that, players will see this as an opportunity to create value for themselves, even if they're older players and have a chance to get, drafted this year and come out, whether they're seniors or juniors, and for the younger guys on the team to sort of build value for their future in terms of how they can use this as an opportunity to continue to develop, grow, and get better.
You are a constant learner. What did this season teach you?
That we probably have to do a much better job with making sure you have great relationships with all your players, because I think it's more difficult, in the landscape of college football to be able to keep people focused, because there's a lot of external factors that can affect them. And you want them to be able to stay focused on the task at hand. That's what they control, and that's really what builds value for them in their future. So, and I think that's the number one thing that, we would like to do a better job of in the future.
Really appreciate your time. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Guys.
Of Alabama's matchup likely to be in the Sugar Bowl against Kansas State. That may be said. I think the Sugar Bowl is contractually obligated to take the highest ranked SEC team, their spot ahead of Tennessee. We'll talk about all of that later. Interesting, I know it's a little bit of a different time. 12 years ago when you played in 2010, you guys were coming off a national championship, had some disappointing losses during that season, just as this team did. But you came out and proved a point in the bowl game.
Right.
What was that like leading up to it, and when it seemed like, oh, well, we've got no motivation here, but then you played the way you did, and all your guys showed up and played, if I recall. Too.
Well, and I think there's some parallels actually to that 2010 team where, I think on paper going into it, arguably maybe one of the most talented teams of the Saban era, and you lose 2 games by a combined 4 points. That year, the comeback, you lose by 1, you lose by 3 to LSU. But it was almost as if it was 12 weeks of pent-up frustration that was exercised in the bowl game against Michigan State, and unfortunately for him, Kirk Cousins. It went very sideways, and I think the big message and the rallying cry for both coach and for everyone that's going to be a part of this bowl game, who decides to play, who decides not to play, I think it will be to try to create momentum for the 2023 team. That was our sole goal, and they were able to use that momentum in 2011 en route to a national championship. So I think that'll be totally different era. Totally different era. Priorities different. NIL's changed things. A lot has changed since then, but without question, I would think the rallying cry within the locker room will be to try to make sure you create momentum. It's the first game of 2023. Starting in that Sugar Bowl against Kansas State.
Bear, we can still hear you in the air, Bear. We still got you, brother.
we get audio working on that too.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting. What you have to, I do give a lot of respect because we've had this debate, and you know how I feel about. I don't think Bama deserved to be in the college football playoff like a lot of us didn't. But when you look at the games they had to play, man, they had a rough schedule. Yeah. I mean, when you go at Texas, when you go at Tennessee, that's one of the craziest environments you'll play in college football. At LSU, like they played a tough schedule. You could tell this was a different group than we've seen in the past. A lot of times you start looking at Alabama and you make cases for X, Y, and Z, or you said they play. I still think they're really good. I didn't think they were a great team at any point in the season. They felt like they were kind of defense would give up points, offense kind of not great outside of Bryce Young. So it wasn't the same as been in the past, but. Y'all believe in that dude? I believe in that guy that he'll find a way next year to be right back in
it's like, well, listen, they didn't hold up their end of the bargain in losses against Tennessee and LSU. Their opponents didn't either, though, in the SEC West. That Texas A&M game at the start of the year, that was supposed to be massive.
Yeah.
A&M lost 7 games. And I know Alabama went into that one with the backup quarterback, but they didn't dominate the game the way you would have expected them to.
Right.
Arkansas ended up losing 6 games. Ole Miss looked good early, but then stumbled down the stretch, losing their final 3. Texas is their best win, and that's just what the resume is. That's what it says. And they did that when Quinn Ewers barely played in that game, and they had 15 penalties. I also agree, David, with what you said about the eye test. This Alabama offense not as explosive, especially at the receiver position. No. What we've seen in recent years, Jamison Williams, John Mechie, Devontae Smith, these guys, it was a different offense, and defensively also giving up big plays too. From, I think, a resume standpoint, I also think from the eye test standpoint, this was not one of the 4 best teams.
What made it difficult from the eye test standpoint was the amount of penalties that they had.
Yeah.
And that will kill the eye test. The things that they did to themselves in these games with the amount of penalties, we've never seen an Alabama team do this. Greg, when you were talking about that, man, I was thinking, boy, that sounds like a great idea. That was the old days right there. That's back when you're absolutely right. You knew going into a bowl game, your team was coming. Yeah. And your thoughts were, we're going to get to play a really good opponent with something to prove and get us ready for next season. Unfortunately, that's not what we do. You literally have to go and find out who's coming with you. Yeah. And you might not find out till you get there.
You might not find out till day of.
And the way the importance of bowl games have been diminished. I mean, Dan Mullen's in here earlier. A couple years ago, they went into a New Year's Six game. He's basically looking ahead to the next year. I sort of think that's the wisest course of action at this point.
This is what I love the most, I think, about college football playoff expansion. Is that better players are going to stay and play. Alabama would be in that playoff picture right now if it was expanded, and all of their best players would be playing.
You know, I think the final thing on Alabama is I'm sort of different. I think the metrics favor them and the eye test destroys them.
Yeah.
Because their FPI is high up there, their strength of schedule is way up there, their efficiency in terms of what the metrics say, way up there. But they don't look the part.
No,
they don't look the part.
We're used to the standard of what Alabama is. That's
fair.
We've seen what they've been through 6 national championships.
Standard or not, they didn't look like one of the best teams in college football.
Well, speaking of not meeting the standard that you set for yourself, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, quarterbacked by Tom Brady, will take on the New Orleans Saints Monday Night Football, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Peyton and Eli will be there for you on ESPN2 with the Manning Cast. Monday Night Countdown starts at 6 o'clock Eastern Time.
It's not how you start, it's how you finish. Controls their own destiny to stay in the college football playoff conversation. Committee has spoken.
I made it on my own, they gon' respect me. Too far in the lead, now they can catch me. Numbers running up there like a track meet.
Reserve your college football playoff national championship experience for this season with Playoff Premium, the ultimate experience. It offers exclusive package options, prime seating locations, all-inclusive hospitality, and many other premium amenities. Visit playoffpremium.com to reserve your championship experience. Today, we take a look at our Chick-fil-A impact players for the college football playoff. Here are the quarterbacks. Stetson Bennett trying to go back-to-back. Starting quarterback for consecutive national championships. J.J. McCarthy and Max Duggan and C.J. Stroud. And boy, McCarthy started the season out of start. Cade McNamara got a start. Who would win the job? The last couple of games, McCarthy has been scintillating. Threw one bad ball last night. Harbaugh was looking at him like, wait, what? Gene Wojciechowski with the Wolverines starting quarterback.
JJ, you made no secret after the Big Ten championship win that Georgia was on your mind. How do you you're playing TCU in the semifinal game. How do you not look ahead to that possibility of playing Georgia again?
It's just staying in the moment. We can't get to them without getting through TCU first. So it's just staying in the moment and preparing all week for TCU.
How would you describe the evolution of this team this season?
It's a mature group of guys, honestly. No matter what adversity or what obstacles come our way, we find a way to persevere.
There's a difference between thinking you can win a national championship and knowing you can win a national championship. Can you tell me what was the feeling last season going into the playoff versus the feeling going into this year's playoff?
That our ultimate goal isn't accomplished yet. And I feel like last year our biggest goal was beating Ohio State and winning Big Ten championship. But what we want to do is not finished yet and not accomplished yet. So I feel like that's the biggest difference.
All right. Thank you for the time, JJ.
Thank you so much.
J.J. McCarthy, Harbaugh went with him because of the upside, and that paid off for sure. Heather Dinich covers the college football playoff for us on ESPN.com, variety of platforms. Heather, from talking to Boo Corrigan, the playoff committee selection chair earlier, didn't seem that really selection was that contentious, and I'm not really sure how contentious it was in that 3-4 spot between TCU and Ohio State. What have you been able to garner there?
Well, I talked to Boo just earlier in a quick walk and talk, and one of the questions I asked him was, this was the first time that the selection committee had to consider 3 teams that did not win conference titles. Alabama, TCU, Ohio State. How did that change the conversation in the room? And he said, it did change it, because without that element as a tiebreaker, you have more emphasis on the resumes, right? And so when you're looking at TCU and that win against K-State in the regular season, which was so important, but he said something that really stuck with me. He brought up the Baylor game and that fire drill of a field goal. And he talked about how that particular moment impressed the committee because it illustrated a team of discipline, a well-coached team to be able to execute that. And he said that regular season win against K-State, not just that they were able to come back, but they were able to ultimately win by 10 points. That impressed the committee too. So just how the conversation changed when in a year when you only have 2 teams, 2 conference champions right now, Michigan and Georgia in the top 4. It's different.
Heather, thank you very much. A team of discipline, team of destiny, perhaps too. That field goal leaks out to the right or left, and we're having a different conversation right now about TCU. As Heather Dinich, our college football playoff reporter. You brought up something interesting. We're going to look at the 12-team playoff pretty soon, and in all likelihood, Kansas State and Clemson would have buys. And and I think because we're coming to the end of this 4-team thing after next season, I'm emboldened. Patently absurd to say you could only have conference champions in a 4-team playoff, especially when you have divisions in it too, because then you would have teams not being considered. TCU wouldn't be considered. Ohio State wouldn't be considered. Alabama, Tennessee, who were next in line, would not be considered.
Would Notre Dame have a chance to be one of the top 4 teams if they don't play in a conference?
No.
Because you have to be a conference champion, right?
Yeah.
So they could never get a bye. Notre Dame could never get a bye in the new format.
Correct. In the new format, that's correct.
Unless something changes.
Unless they.
You know something we don't know?
I mean,
break news.
Things change.
Break news. I'm just saying. Things change. If you're telling, they're a football school. Every school in America is a football. Most schools in America are football schools, and that's how you make your revenue, and that's what your priority is. And you don't do something about that. I'm not hard to believe.
Well, we're going to do away with divisions. So if we're going to keep the conference championship games, which that's going to happen, you at least get the top 2 teams, which means you didn't get the Michigan-Ohio State rematch in the playoffs this year, but we would have had it again yesterday, at least in this year, had that format been in place.
And I didn't have a problem with keeping it at 4. If you wanted to make it a prerequisite to make the playoff, you have to win your conference championship. Well, you have to get rid of divisions because not all divisions are created equal right now. It's absurd. The Big Ten West, no disrespect to Purdue, good team.
Not all conferences are either.
Not all conferences are either, but it is a way to expand the playoff without completely doing away with the regular season matchups that matter. So you would basically take, because we haven't seen a lot of group of 5 teams involved, you would take a 4-team playoff to a 10-team playoff by adding basically best 2 teams in each conference play. That's the first round of the playoff, and then the top 4 get considered beyond that. So I would have been open to that, but that ship sailed long ago. Yeah. We're in the 12-team world now.
Yeah.
Money talks. It'll be cool, though. Yeah. It'll be cool because of what you said. I just think late in the season, a bunch of teams still involved, like a bunch of fan bases that still get to invest in their team and feel those moments that are so awesome. Yeah. Like those, like yesterday, we're walking out of Jerry World and you're watching the TCU fans and you're watching the Kansas State fans. And the Kansas State fans are going bananas, and TCU are like heartbroken. And by the way, as a Georgia fan and a Georgia player, I know that feeling. I know exactly what it feels like. So to get more fans, more fan bases, more players involved, it's going to be super cool.
And to your point right there, in that game yesterday, at Kansas State, I just said they would have had a bye.
Right.
Had TCU won the game, it is likely when the rankings came out that Kansas State would have been knocked out of the playoff yesterday. Correct. So I think it elevates some games, but it diminishes the importance of
I think
others.
Also home games. I think is another great part of this expansion as well. Imagine the atmosphere that we're going to see here now in the playoff. We see these great atmospheres. It's one of the best things about college football. Obviously, it's the tradition and the rivalries and some of these atmospheres, but in the playoffs, win, continue, lose, and go home. How great that's going to be, and the weather, how that impacts
that's what I'm talking about.
Home field advantage
Ohio?
for teams from the north.
Oh, yeah, you have to go to, because I remember you have to go to like Georgia, go to Ohio.
Yeah.
Like, I remember took official visit to Ohio State. I got off the plane, I was like, Mama, what is that? Like, holy cow. What is that white stuff on the ground? It's super cold, and vice versa. You know, going down to it'll be a fun crossover with warm weather, cold weather. And
we just reached the top of the hour, and the little thing in there, if you notice, the teams that get the home playoff games in the new format, which is still another season away. We have this year for this format and next year. They can play at home, but they also can designate a stadium close by if they choose to, meaning that they could play at an NFL stadium if they wanted to. And the reason for that might be, I was talking to Kevin Warren in the offseason, a lot of the college teams, even in the Big Ten, don't have the heated fields underneath there, so it could become a treacherous surface. Maybe Ohio State doesn't want to play on treacherous surface.
That's what we want for the teams coming from the south, coming uptown. Like, we want a treacherous surface.
No, Ohio State doesn't.
But you
want Marvin Harrison slipping around all over the place.
But the other thing is, though, it's the same thing for the teams up north that may have to travel down south.
100%.
Yeah, we're in wintertime up north, and we go down. And I remember more when I was in NFL. When I would be in like Seattle and then have to go play in Tampa.
Ooh,
and I would walk outside and the same reaction you had
I can't
was like, what is that? We haven't seen that thing up there, and it's like you have to it's a different game plan.
100%.
So
But that's what they do in bowl games
ways.
anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you get some domes and stuff in bowl, especially
I wonder
big
if you
games.
picked another stadium. Would you do it if you wanted to make more revenue in ticket sales? If it was a bigger venue, and would you keep the same allotment and percentage? Is it a
I
true
think that'll
home
all.
game?
I mean, I don't know the answer to that, just to be candid, but I think that will all be controlled by the College Football Playoff Committee. And my hope is that if you're going to play games on campus, play them on campus.
Play them on campus.
Because that's what we want. That's what we want them to
And
do.
the college
Yeah,
would
that's
ask
what we
that
want.
detailed of a question about that now.
Yeah, later.
It's 2 years away.
You're thinking about
Later-
hospitality seating.
Later on, we've got time. We'll look at how a 12-team playoff will look later on, get the rest of the rankings coming up about half an hour, 7 through 25. But this year, 4 teams, and TCU is in for the first time. Max Duggan gave a heroic effort in the Big 12 championship game yesterday. A little bit short, but the Horned Frogs still going into the playoff. They'll face Michigan. Chris Budden with the TCU quarterback.
Now you guys are sitting here celebrating a spot in the playoffs. How have you guys been able to continue to put it together week after week?
Yeah, it just shows the culture that Coach Beck's brought in with him of, just continuing to, be ourselves, be confident, stack days upon each other, have great days at the office. But it's been a great run, but, we're not done yet.
A pretty emotional press conference yesterday when you lose in the Big 12 championship. How do you now regroup and focus towards Michigan?
Yeah, that one hurts, but we got to get over it. No one's going to feel sorry for us. Michigan's not going to feel sorry for us, and they're a great team. One of the top 2 teams in the country. So we know that we have a steady option in front of us.
Last question: if I had told you in August that you'd be standing here as the number 3 team in the playoffs, you would have said what?
Well, let's go. It's going to be fun.
Congratulations, Max.
Thank you.
Max has got some serious hoodie game. He's got that Hypnotoad Frogs by 90 on there, and that one was that was a good one too.
That place went nuts every time. If you mentioned Hypnotoad or put it on the Jumbotron yesterday, TCU fans absolutely love that. Good. What a great fan base to be a part of this year. Yeah. I mean, you get a new coach. You had so many chances to be really good in the past with Gary Patterson and new coach. What's it going to bring about? We're going to play this thing called offense now. Like we're going to be really fast and we're going to pitch it all over the yard. And how about the weapons? I mean, you talk about a weapon standpoint. They've got weapons. You want to talk about best running back in this game?
Andre Miller.
Kentrell Miller is a baller. Can catch it, can run through tackles, can run around you. You talk about Johnston out wide, like he's a true number 1. They got weapons. Like this offense has been fun to watch. And as long as Duggan does what he did yesterday and runs the football and opens up the offense even more, they can score some points.
He's the key. And I think the thing I've been most impressed watching Max Duggan all year is the guy just competes.
He's tough.
And he battles.
Yeah.
And Jim Harbaugh was alluding to that earlier, talking about him in games. Things aren't always great on offense at TCU. Pass protection has been very shoddy at times. He's been under crazy duress. He's taken some big shots. He's also missed a lot of throws. When you watch him, you watch through the games, he does miss a lot of open guys, but the game's never over. We talked about this team coming back in the second half 5 times this year, trailing in the second half. They have tremendous leadership from Max Duggan. He just has this moxie about him, where he's able to take this football team and just put them on their shoulders. And you saw a perfect example of that in the Big 12 championship game against Kansas State. Bruised and battered, out of breath. This guy will play till there's no time on the clock. And because of that, as long as he's on the field, it's amazing to think he wasn't even starting week 1 against Colorado. That was Chandler Morris. But with Max Duggan, TCU has a chance.
What I love about him, and you mentioned him missing some throws. He's far from a flawless prospect, right? But what I love is that Sonny Dykes will say, I don't care if you missed 5, 6, 7 in a row. We're going back to it. We're going to keep taking shots. We're going to keep the foot down. Now, here's the thing that concerns me a little bit about TCU. We're having our little happy parade here, understandably.
Okay, party pooper, come on.
I love TCU. I love them. I love them all season long. But there have, in the last few weeks, they've started to be a little bit incapable of stopping the run against quality offensive lines. Not that, Baylor is star-studded across the board, but guess who is?
They bloodied them up.
Michigan.
Though. Yeah.
Baylor bloodied them yesterday. You look at what Deuce Vaughn was able to do in Kansas State, that offensive line. They were able to bloody them a little bit. Gave up 200-plus rushing yards and 160 rushing yards before contact to Deuce Vaughn and company. So I do think that this is going to give them some time. Take a deep breath. They've played a lot of close calls. And I'm telling you, I think you overlook TCU, you're in trouble. But they need to shore up that front 7 defensively, because if they don't, that run game for Michigan is going to be a major
I don't know
problem.
that you can shore something up in such a short span. It's like you get to the playoff and you sort of are what you are. Whatever you bring to the table, that's what you're going to bring to the table. It's going to be interesting because you guys mentioned TCU has come back in games and found ways to win. Michigan is a second-half football team, largely because of what you said, their ability to be physical, and it wears teams down. And we've seen Michigan play in closer games in the first half and then come out in the second half and just absolutely run someone over. This will be interesting if Michigan gets a lead and TCU is trying to play from behind against that Michigan run game and the physicality that they haven't seen yet this season. That is an interesting place that we've seen TCU thrive in. I don't know if they can thrive in that situation against Michigan.
Best part of TCU's defense, 2 corners, rendered them obsolete just by making them come up and tackle. Maybe. I mean, Michigan
Joe Gillespie's 3-3-5 scheme at TCU is tricky. It's kind of the in vogue thing now, defense in college football, having 3 safeties and mixing and matching, trying to confuse people. J.J. McCarthy's going to have to study.
Yeah.
He's going to get a lot of different looks pre-snap.
Got plenty of time to study.
Yeah, 4 weeks.
Plenty of time. You got plenty of weeks. Study.
The real question is, can TCU make that study matter, or is J.J. studying, turning around, handing the ball to 7?
Yes. Yes, it will be.
It will be?
Give it to 7. That's a good idea.
X Factor's coming. Who can be the guy a little bit under the radar who can sway these games?
I'm so motivated. I'm so motivated.
This is the College Football Playoff Selection Show, presented by AT&T 5G.
Playoff field has been set, and ESPN is proud to support the College Football Playoff Foundation and its Extra Yard for Teachers initiative. Recognizes thousands of great teachers every year together, doing more to uplift the teaching profession than any other sports entity in the country. For more about Extra Yard for Teachers, follow at CFP Extra Yard. Great teachers can change lives. Let's take a look at today's AT&T countdown to the College Football Playoff National Championship, the largest regular season loss by an eventual playoff team. Ohio State is going to check in 3rd on this list after the 22-point loss to Michigan in the regular season finale. Georgia lost to Auburn, avenged that loss, and played for the national championship. Notre Dame did not. They had beaten Clemson earlier in the season. They lost in the semifinals as we go up to Matt Berry.
Brace, thank you. Back up here in the playoff penthouse. Robert Griffin III, Dan Mullen, Matt Berry. As always, thought it was bizarre a second ago. Galloway down there asking for beads. We're here to talk ball. We're here to talk X factors in both playoff games because, gentlemen, there are stars on each of these teams, but there's always someone that steps up in one of these big games to propel their team. We're going to start in the Fiesta Bowl with TCU, Robert. Who's your X factor?
Okay, so TCU, everyone wants to talk about the offense and Max Duggan, and rightfully so. He's a red-haired Targaryen, and we're all just living in the house of the Duggan. But for TCU, it all comes down to D. Winters, their linebacker. Defense wins championships, offense puts cheeks in the seats. But if you're talking about this guy, he has to show up in a big way. He has to be patient in fitting his gaps to stop this Michigan running game. He has to play like his hair is on fire when getting after the quarterback. I think he has 7.5 sacks this year, and he has to let Michigan know that winter is coming.
He went all the way with that, by the way.
That was pretty good.
I was like, is he going to get one more pun in there with the house of Duggan? And I love it because you're right. It's always about the offense with TCU, but someone else has to step up. That's a good one for you. What about you, Coach?
Well, the X factor for them, Griffin Kell, the field goal kicker. And here's why. When you watch TCU this year, you know one thing. It's going to come down to about the final play of the game. And it doesn't matter. He might not look like he's prepared or just jog out on the field as time's expiring and casually roll out there, get set up, bang, kick the game-winning field goal. He's 8 of 9 on 50-yard-plus field goals. And when you get into these playoff games, and it's going to come right down to the wire, he can be an X factor because he might be the best kicker in the playoffs.
And with that leg, he could fire his Kell shot to put the other team away.
Ooh, I like it. I like it. Yes. There we go.
All right, so now we're getting warmed up here in the penthouse. All right, other side of this match, if that was TCU, give me the X factor from Michigan.
Man, Ronnie Bell, okay? this wide receiver, when I talked to offensive coordinator Sharon Moore and Matt Weiss as their coordinators there in Michigan, they call this guy the junkyard dog. You need a big play, he's going to make it for you. You need a big conversion on third down, he's the one that they're calling. If you need a block in the running game, he's going to put on his workman gloves, he's going to go in there and get it done for you. They have been astonished with his ability to go out and make plays for them, and they've been saved by the bell multiple times this year.
There we go.
Got it.
There it is.
Luke Schoonmaker, because if you look at it, and he needs a compliment.
Oh, yeah.
And I know J.J. McCarthy is getting all of the attention in what they do. But Michigan is good because they can run the football, and when you run the football, you have play-action pass. And the play-action pass, you know, you can go to Ronnie Bell on the one-on-one shot deep down the field. But play-action pass, the guys that come open and make the plays are the tight ends in the play-action passing game. And Luke Shoemaker's a guy with size, with ability, can go up and get the ball in traffic, and is going to make J.J. McCarthy look like a better quarterback.
And I'll tell you, in this game, there's going to have to be a couple of players that are equipped for a shootout with TCU, because this could easily get back and forth. And I would give the advantage to the Horned Frogs in terms of deep threats in this one. That's going to be a fun matchup just because of the offenses. In the nightcap, the Peach Bowl, Georgia, Ohio State. Again, star power everywhere. We'll start with you and the Bulldogs. Give me the one player that must step up.
Yeah, you know, we all know Stetson Bennett, and this defense that they have on the other side is phenomenal. But it really comes down to the way they love to play football, and if they do it their way, then Darnell Washington, their tight end, has to show up in a big way. All 6 foot, 7 foot of him. The man is a monster, and he's a mismatch down the field, not only because of his size and his ability to run block as basically an extra offensive tackle, but also because, you might not know this, but he leads them. Of their top 10 pass catchers, he has the highest yards per catch on average at 16. So he's not only blocking, he's stretching it down the field, and in the red zone, when he's 6'7", you just throw it up to him. I can see them using that a lot more in the playoffs.
It's unfair that they have him and Brock Bowers. They have those two humans that can run the way that they do and catch the football.
Yeah, because Brock Bowers is the other X factor. And here's why. Only one of the top 4 pass catchers at Georgia this year is a wide receiver. So his running mate, Darnell, does the dirty work as the tight end. They got to find out where is Brock Bowers on the field, because they move him everywhere, all over the field. He's going to line up at receiver. He's going to line up in the slot. He's going to line up at the wing. He's going to line up at tight end. They're going to hand him a jet sweep. They use him as their playmaker, their dynamic guy in the offense. And as you get into big games, and if you are going to go against an Ohio State, and Ohio State can score points, and you need to go score points and put up big numbers, he's their most dynamic all-around weapon that they can put out there on the field offense.
Coach, both of those guys we just mentioned are Sunday guys. And Matt, we're not talking about ice cream.
Yeah.
Well done. There you go.
Brock Bowers he's also first team. That guy's got to play another year of college football.
So
That's
unfair.
how good he is, and he's only a true sophomore. All right, other side of the matchup, Ohio State.
Ohio State, we don't know who's going to play, right? The skilled players, running backs, wide receivers, but we know who should, and it's Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. looks like he ate his dad, and he's on the Liver King's diet. The guy is huge, 6'4", 205 pounds. He goes up and he makes tough contested catches, and he can also just fly right past you. So as Ohio State's leading receiver, he has to have a big day, because when you're going up against a team like Georgia, your special players have to make special plays, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is special.
He's also on first team. You have to play another season of college football, and I'm not sure the Liver King was just on the liver, but that's another story. So Marvin Harrison Jr., we meant just that part of it.
Well, Ohio State, we came into the beginning of the year and everyone thought, boy, Ohio State is going to be the team to beat. Look at all the offensive firepower. And guess what they needed to fix, and they can do it, is fix their defense. And that's led by Tommy Eichenberg, linebacker right there, who comes into the season. He has 112 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and he is an old school Ohio State linebacker in the middle, leading the defense, making plays, and that's what they're going to do. We said, what were they missing? What has been missing for them to be a championship team that they need to be? And it's defense. And they're going in. Yeah, if you're going to play a team like Georgia that wants to run the football and utilize tight ends, Your defense is going to step up. It's going to be led by the guy in the middle.
And you guys know better than anyone, being offensive guys, when a team can run on you the way Michigan did at the end of that game, that steals the defense's soul.
Oh, yeah.
They've got an opportunity to right that in their playoff game against Georgia. Cannot wait to see both of these teams come up. By the way, speaking of stretching things out, we know the New Year's Six is coming at 2:30, as is the rest of the top 25. Stay with us. It's a celebration of college football here on ESPN.
College Football Playoff Selection Show, presented by AT&T 5G, is brought to you by Taco Bell's Live Más Student Section, giving the biggest games back to the biggest fans, the students, since 2014.
Fans are gearing up to take those seats within the Live Más Student Section. Taco Bell and the College Football Playoff will be providing free tickets to 500 students from each school in the Verbo Fiesta Bowl and the College Football Playoff National Championship game this year. Taco Bell Live Más Student Section has become a staple of the postseason. Monday Night Football, Tom Brady and the Buccaneers taking on Alvin Kamara and the Saints, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Peyton and Eli at 6, or rather on ESPN2, and then Monday Night Countdown starts at 6. Pleased to be joined by the great Todd McShay. Looking forward to some matchups here. So let's start in the Fiesta Bowl, Michigan and TCU. Give us a matchup to watch there.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Quentin Johnson. He's a potential top 15 pick, the wide receiver from TCU, going up against Mike Sandversteel, who came out of nowhere. I mean, you look back at his career, he's a wide receiver. He transitions over to the cornerback spot and really was kind of a nickel safety. Now he's playing on the outside. But Quentin Johnson is a brutal matchup. He was injured for a little bit. I mean, he's like a pterodactyl, 6'4", 215. I stood next to him on the field. His arms are down to his ankles. I mean, he catches everything in range. And what's unique about him is the twitchiness for such a long guy after the catch. So that's going to be an interesting matchup. A little bit like Richard Sherman. Remember Jim Harbaugh back at Stanford moved Sherman from wide receiver to corner, had him an afterthought in the draft and goes on to be a star. I'm not saying Sandversteel is going to be that, but he's kind of trending in that direction. He's going to be a late-round pick who I think a team's going to get a lot of value.
You heard him, Richard Sherman comparison.
There you go.
I like that, though, in this game, though. I think it's the wide receivers at TCU versus that secondary in Michigan. And, Paul, you talked about it earlier, just how dangerous the weapons are at TCU. Just takes one play with these guys.
Yeah.
It's not just Quentin Johnson, but Tay Barber, Darius Davis on the inside, too. Those guys in the slot, they can catch a bubble and take it the distance, right? They've got Savion on the outside, the other side. Savion Thomas, he's 6'4", 6'5" as well. These one-on-one shots. But, man, DJ Turner and Will Johnson, the freshman at Michigan, these guys are outstanding one-on-one cover guys, and they can kind of mix and match and mark guys all the way across the field. You know, this TCU offense, 19 plays of 50 or more yards this year. It's the most in college football, but against that vaunted secondary from Michigan, I think that's a great place to keep your eyes in this game.
You like Johnston?
I like him a lot, even though he's a bigger guy. I like the days when it was.
Is that an insult?
Discriminate against bigger guys?
I do somewhat. I like the days when it was more of the smaller, faster guys. But we've gotten to these days where it's the 6'4". Every time you look around now, you look up a guy's height, he's 6'4". Everybody is 6'4" now.
Everybody.
Which makes it a lot easier for quarterbacks. You know what I mean? When you talk about the long arms. So they don't have to be as accurate with football. So you just put them out there and these guys go make plays. These guys are also more difficult to cover also. Now, there's no negative in it. It just wasn't my game. I like looking at 5'11" fast guys.
What about a matchup to watch in the Peach Bowl between Georgia and Ohio State? That would be plentiful, one would think, in terms of talent.
I'm going with a unique matchup because I want to get these two guys involved. C.J. Stroud, obviously, quarterback for Ohio State, and then defensive tackle Jalen Carter. Have you guys watched him the last few weeks?
He
had the ankle injury. He came back. He's playing like the #1 defensive prospect in the entire country this past couple weeks. Now, C.J. Stroud, when he has a clean pocket, he can pick you apart. He's got the timing, the touch, the accuracy down the field, all three levels, really. But the Achilles heel for him is when pressure comes up the middle in his face, and 88 is going to be a nightmare to handle. So it's about changing his clock, maybe Ryan Day implementing more where they're moving the pocket and getting outside, but he's going to have to do more with his feet and more with his movement than he's used to doing and has been comfortable doing.
And it was interesting when you watched Georgia play against Tennessee, and Hendon Hooker was the same way. Before he faced Tennessee, he was standing in the pocket. and get a real clean look at things. And then he faced Georgia, and they started to get in his face, started to get some pressure at him, and things change a little bit. It'll be interesting to see. And Ohio State, who has at times struggled to run the football, they're going to have to find ways to get the run game going just to slow down the pass rush and give C.J. Stroud a chance to stand in a clean pocket. I don't think they can do it unless they find a way to get the run game going to keep that defense off balance.
Ringo versus Harrison is going to be dirty. Harrison would be if he was draft eligible, he'd already be the top. He'd be the top receiver. We'd be talking about Johnson. We'd be talking about him.
But Mike Carter, is Carter a better NFL prospect than Trayvon Walker, who went number 1 overall to our Jags?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So how about some other NFL guys? Keep an eye on during the playoff.
You know, it was interesting. I went back and I looked at the top 20 prospects that are. Remember, it's eligible prospects. So Harrison isn't eligible yet, but the top 20 prospects, 7 of them were from Ohio State. You know, you look at that line. Georgia had 6. Ohio State had 7. The most. They're the one that crept into the Final Four in terms of this college football playoff. But they not only have the most draft eligible prospects as the number 4 seed, but they also have the number 1 prospect in C.J. Stroud. So that's gonna be the key. We saw with Georgia's defense. I think it was because LSU had to throw in the situation they were in for a large part of it. But there's some vulnerability in that secondary. Stroud, if he has a monster game, they can pull off the upset.
That reminds me of Ohio State in 2014. The first year of the college football playoff, all those NFL guys and Zeke and everybody else, big-time players make big plays in big games. That Ohio State team also wasn't favored against Alabama.
Won it all.
Yeah.
We're gonna show you the rest of the top 25, 7 through 25 coming up. Also give you all of the matchups for the New Year's 6 bowl games. That's coming up in a matter of minutes as we get close to the bottom of the hour. I think we know where Tennessee is going. What a year for the Big Orange. And by the way, just lost their offensive coordinator.
Yeah, they did.
To USF. Good hire, by the way, with Alex Golan taking over the Bulls.
Welcome back to the College Football Playoff Selection Show, presented by AT&T 5G.
Capital One Bowl Mania, it is back. Big bowl game winners for a chance to win up to $1 million. It is a tricky thing to do. You don't know who's going to show up to play. You can create a group, join a group, get all your friends, relatives, make your picks, ESPN.com/BowlMania. Also a friendly reminder, tune in Championship Drive, Rankings Reaction, and Championship Drive Bowl Breakdown presented by Capital One. Again, a directive to visit ESPN.com/BowlMania to sign up for Capital One Bowl Mania and to make your picks, and you can be aided by those Championship Drive shows in your thought process. I'm sure we have reached just across 2:30 Eastern Time, and as promised, it's about time to bring you the rest of the college football playoff top 25 rankings. Reese Davis, Joey Galloway, David Pollack, Jesse Palmer, Greg McElroy in here. Kirk Herbstreit was here earlier, dipped after an hour, but you know, the guys with some staying power. You look distressed by that little piece of news.
It's still cold in here. I thought when Herbie left, you would turn down the air conditioning. It's still cold.
By the end of this thing, I'm going to feel like Max Duggan felt at the end of the Big 12 title.
Just getting beat up. That's all it is.
You're going to see me pushing you guys away. I got it. All right, give me
hyperbole, thy name is Jesse Palmer. Let's look at the New Year's 6 bowls because, you know, they're contracted bowls and the College Football Playoff Committee gets involved in some of them if they were a hard fit. So the Capital One Orange Bowl, December 30th, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. ACC champion Clemson going to the Orange Bowl. That is an appropriately named bowl game with Clemson against Tennessee. Big Orange in there for the first time since '98.
South Carolina set
what a
this bowl
season.
up.
I mean, Tennessee's been unbelievable this year. You look at them and the big win, obviously, against Alabama that you saw, but no Hendon Hooker, which is a big deal. Clemson, by the way, they made their quarterback change too. So I think Klubnik will be the guy, but two offenses, two orange teams. A lot of orange in the
not to think that Tennessee can't score. I remember the only game they played without Hendon Hooker start to finish against Vandy, 56-0.
Not bad.
Right? And you're going to say, well, it's Vandy. It's a 5-win Vandy team.
It was Vandy.
That beat Kentucky and Florida. They were getting better late. So I actually thought Tennessee should be ranked ahead of Alabama. the final college football.
I could have rocked with that. They
I
beat
think
them.
if they still had Hendon Hooker, I think they would have, and I think the committee does take that into account when they're ranking those teams. Who's not on the team any longer?
Hey, poor old Clemson, though. We haven't even talked about poor old Clemson.
Yeah, but remember this, too. Joe Milton, remember, he won the starting quarterback job over Hendon Hooker at the start of last season.
Then got benched.
And then, well, okay, but I'm just trying to give Joe a little love. He also started a lot of games at Michigan.
He can throw it over a mountain.
Interesting thing about this game, too, you talk about prospects playing or not. A lot of those NFL guys up front for Clemson's D-line, who will play and who won't. I think that'll have a big impact on Joe Milton's success in this game.
All right, that's December 30th at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Let's look at the next New Year's Six Bowl. And the All-State Sugar Bowl will be at noon on New Year's Eve prior to the College Football Playoff semifinals. Alabama goes in, highest-ranked SEC team. SEC champion Georgia displaced. Crimson Tide goes in to face the Big 12 champion Kansas State Wildcats.
And Greg, this will be the game. We'll find out if Alabama's going to go old school, and all their guys are going to show up to this game and get ready to play to set themselves up for next season. I do think that when Coach Saban goes out and tries to talk about his team should be in the playoff, and then they don't get in, I wonder what effect that has on your players, who you're asking to now still get up, still be ready to play, still focus, when now you just added to the, well, we didn't get in, so how important is going to play in the Sugar Bowl?
Got to create value for yourself,
exactly. Opportunity to create value for yourself.
You say that mockingly, but there's something to it.
There is.
For the guys that don't have value,
you had 13 other opportunities.
If you're a guy that has value, though, Reese, the idea behind that, though, is it's the same kind of approach for spring football, where you start to look at it. If you're a Jesse Palmer or a David Pollock, you're like, I'm not necessarily looking for this bowl game to create value, so what difference does it make to me? It's more for the second string guy that was behind it.
Like
it's trying to make a name for. See, I wasn't going to go there, but it's for that guy to create that kind of value. I think it still gives a bad look.
Have you guys been watching Will Howard play, by the way?
He's played
Kansas
great.
State. Kansas is taking over for Adrian Martinez.
Big
that offense has been so much more explosive. Has a real good understanding of what Colin Klein's doing, calling plays. They need Malik Knowles back on the field, though. Got hurt in the Big 12 championship game at wide receiver. Big-time playmaker.
I imagine Bryce Young plays, by the way.
Well, you also have to wonder about the health of his shoulder, too, because he hasn't practiced a lot in the last part of the season. So that'll be a question, who exactly shows up to play for Alabama. Not in the figurative sense, literally. In there. Goodyear Cotton Bowl. How about the Tulane Green Wave going to a major bowl? That's January 2nd, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. And USC on the other side.
First major bowl for Tulane since 1940. So it's been a minute. That was actually
they were in the SEC then.
They were. That was 2 decades before they left the SEC. So this to me is a fascinating bowl game because I think Tulane, obviously with Willie Fritz and what they've accomplished this year, one of the great turnaround stories of the modern day. To have lost 10 games last year to now winning 10 games this year. Unbelievable rushing attack, and if there's one thing that we learned about SC the last couple of weeks, man, they are inconsistent on the defensive side of the football. They played great against Notre Dame, terrible against Utah. Can they take some strides on that side of the ball? Because they got to get that thing ironed out. Because they're going to score points on Lincoln Riley, but if they want to make the playoff next year,
if Caleb Williams is healthy.
I love this game for Tulane.
I mean, to score points.
With Caleb Williams' hamstring, though,
that's next year, though. Next year.
I'm just saying that's a big deal in that ball game. Like Caleb Williams is the offense, and if you have a torn hamstring, or if it was, whatever it is, like that offense runs through his ability to be a jackrabbit and run around and make plays.
I would love to see who's favored in this game. This is a great game for Tulane and what they do with Pratt and Spears, the running back, and a USC team that has struggled on the defensive side.
You think Tulane's going to be favored?
I would love to see who is favored in this game.
SC by
just the fact that Tulane won 2 games last year.
Yeah,
amazing.
It's been a season of turnaround.
This New Year's Six bowl game is amazing.
I mean, look at TCU coming from a losing record to the playoff. Tulane from 2 wins to New Year's Six bowl. And notice these games are on January 2nd, New Year's Day on a Sunday this year. So the Rose Bowl, 5 o'clock Eastern Time on the 2nd of January. The Pac-12 champion Utah Utes for the 2nd straight year had a great wild Rose Bowl game against Ohio State a year ago. And Penn State, last time they were there, a sensational battle. They came up a little short against Sam Darnold in the USC.
Saquon Barkley game. That's right. I'll tell you what, speaking of running backs, how good are the 2 true freshmen for Penn State?
Man.
Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen. These guys have a lot of speed. They can make people miss. but that's a different deal in the Utah defense they're facing. Extremely physical up front, stopping the run. They take a lot of credit making tackles and trying to put your quarterback in third and long situations. So that'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Hard time topping that last year's game, as exciting as Ohio State and Utah was.
Yeah,
Goodness.
Yeah, it was a great game.
Cam Rising just
scored
scored again.
Yeah. Chris Felica back with us now. And Bear, sometimes you get into these New Year's Six games and, absent Alabama, where you'll question who's going to play and all that. There's so many new teams involved in it this year, with Tennessee elevating Tulane for the first time, Utah going back wanting to prove a point. It seems like maybe there's a little more juice around some of the New Year's Six games than you might anticipate normally.
No, there certainly are. And to answer Joey's question about what the line might potentially be in Tulane USC, it's open at USC -2.5. So I'm curious to see what the total's going to be in that game, because there will not be many stops in that game. We saw how bad USC's defense is. Tulane, certainly if Caleb Williams is healthy, will not get many stops in that game. So I'm curious to see what the total is going to open in that game. But you guys hit the nail on the head with Alabama and Kansas State. I can't wait to see what the odds makers post this opener at, because I think there are a large number of people waiting to hit the refresh button and just hit Kansas State, Kansas State, Kansas State, Kansas State, because this number is going to open lower than what it normally would, because everybody knows the people who's not going to play at Alabama. You're not going to have Will Anderson. You're not going to have Bryce Young. You're not going to have a ton of guys. And against a team we saw yesterday in the Big 12 championship game that can beat Alabama and win a New Year's Six bowl, I can't wait to see what the number is for this game, because Kansas State, it's Kansas State or pass. I mean, maybe you can bet Alabama to reduce number, but the way this game's going to open up on the odds board, knowing what we know about what's happened in the past about Alabama players getting up, not being able to get up for this game, Kansas State's going to be an awfully attractive side, I think, in that Sugar Bowl.
And Bear, just to clarify, I think what he's saying is highly likely, but it's not as if it's been official.
Correct.
We've heard from Nick Saban earlier, and he said that he hoped that the players would choose to create value for themselves. But there's some who have already created a lot of value for themselves that might want to guard that value. We'll see. We'll see how that unfolds. It's a great point there for sure. You guys ready to look at the rest of the rankings? Got a little bit of a hint.
There was one I saw next to, did I just see an 11 next to Penn State after they were 8th last week? I just want to make sure.
You probably have Kansas State and Utah maybe move ahead of them.
But they dropped 3 spots. I'm just curious to see how this thing's going to
People always say drop 3 spots. Sometimes you have to remember it's not dropping, it's people moving ahead.
Ohio State didn't play also, and they went up a spot.
So there you go. All right, let's
both ways.
College football playoff top 25 presented by AT&T 5G, UTSA and Troy, both out of the group of 5, both conference champions, round out the rankings.
And Notre Dame at number 21, and that Ohio State win against Notre Dame first week of the season for their resume, I think that ended up playing a big factor with respect to the committee and putting Ohio State in.
Also good to see Troy in there, too. I mean, just a remarkable season for John Summerall. And I know that Tulane is the premier group of 5 team. No denying that. They deserve the bowl bid to the Cotton Bowl. But I just don't think it should have been as much of a slam dunk. I mean, one of Troy's losses is to Ole Miss in the opening week of the season by a couple touchdowns. And they lost on a Hail Mary to App State when you guys were there for game day. It's a magical day. So that's a heck of a football team. I'm glad it's getting some recognition.
Hey, UTSA, too.
Really good.
But I, to be clear, neither of us have a beef with Tulane being ranked.
Not at all.
Do you agree?
No,
I mean, they had to win over Kansas State.
I just think that it was almost like a slam dunk. I don't think it necessarily should have been.
All right, so 16 through 20, Texas checks in at 8-4 in the team, who perhaps had as much impact as anyone on the college football playoff field. Shane Beamer's Gamecocks at 19.
And what a way to finish their season. And that's why I mentioned they set up the Orange Bowl with what they did at the end of their season. And so it's interesting when you see a team like South Carolina, they go through a season and you're wondering what's wrong with Spencer Sanders, what's wrong with this offense. And then 2 straight games, they look like the offense and the Spencer Sanders we expected to see.
Well, and clearly the best team in Louisiana, Tulane.
Oh,
man, that was
Spencer Rattler. You mean Spencer Rattler?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
And then the best team in Louisiana clearly is Tulane.
Oh boy, no one will react.
If LSU beats Texas A&M heading into the SEC, if they beat Georgia, are they in with 2 losses?
What is this if and but? Come on, man.
Interesting.
If they beat Georgia,
you just said you took 2 losses off of their schedule. What they could have done.
We got 4 hours here.
I mean, come on, man.
And also, you kind of lost me after you admitted they lost to A&M.
They did.
Yeah, that was, especially at that point in the season when A&M was
very ungood. They got
yeah, it was not good. Chip Kelly's team down to 18. They're in the final rankings at 18. A tough finish to the season for the Ducks. Beeve in there, a spot ahead at 14 as they move up a spot. Florida State probably playing as well as anyone in the ACC at the end of the season. And then Michael Penix in Washington, Penn State at 11 and 12.
Florida State also with a very interesting season with losing those games in the middle. You know what I mean? They start off with a great win against LSU, and then they go through a season and lose 3 in the middle. But that is a team that moving forward, I think Mike Norvell has that team finally playing with some confidence.
How about Washington, too? I mean, Kalen DeBoer's first year goes out and gets an impact transfer in Michael Penix. Now, think about this. I mean, that's going to be a destination for guys that are saying, hey, man, I want to go play in that offense where I can put a bunch of numbers up and play against some defenses that are a little bit gettable.
How about the Pac-12 conference? 6 teams ranked. And this is traditionally the weakest Power 5. 6 straight years now they're missing out on the college football playoff because of what happened in the Pac-12 championship game with USC losing. But a lot of good teams in that conference with numbers beside their names.
You know what? Real quick, so you look through 7 through 10. Greg, you make a point about DeBoer, and you can make the same point about Chris Kleiman, whose team's at number 9. You're starting to look for a coach. If you find a guy that's won big at lower levels, chances are he's still going to know how to do it.
Right.
I mean, DeBoer won national championships at the NAIA level, which Kleiman also did at the FCS level. SC falls 6 spots. They went from the playoff to 10. Or not in the playoff, but you know what I mean. They had the 4 spot going into championship week.
I think that says a little bit about what you think about probably maybe their defense. But still think about Lincoln Riley. I mean, everybody they took from the transfer portal to completely change that roster and to make it click, and you were one game away from being in the college football playoff. That's still a heck of a seat. I guarantee you Southern Cal fans are pretty jazzed.
I think it's also saying how important it is to play for a conference championship. Greg, you mentioned Penn State falling.
Right.
Because if you look at Penn State with 2 losses and who those 2 losses were against, and these teams that came up, as Reese mentioned, I think the committee is saying it matters if you play for a conference championship.
And you know what? When we get to 12, that would have given Clemson the bye. It would have given given Utah the bye too.
Right.
Utah would have had Clemson, and Utah would have had bye.
And we would be sitting here arguing about Utah against Kansas State.
You got to have something to fill that 4 hours in 2024 as we go upstairs to Matt Barry.
You're far too polite with those guys. Palmer, that's $1 for the hypotheticals. Galloway, that's $1 for the Spencer Sanders. Keep this thing in line here. All right, New Year's 6, some fun matchups. So many storylines in these, included the South Carolina Bowl with Clemson and Tennessee and the Orange Bowl. But a couple of games you guys want to take a look at. You're calling one of these in the Cotton Bowl. What do you like about this one?
Yeah, calling the Cotton Bowl, and it really just excited for Tulane. Their first major bowl berth since 1939. I don't know about you guys, but I wasn't alive then. But they did win a conference championship.
Looking at me?
Their mother might be that old. I don't know.
Coaching age can age it quite a bit.
They did win a conference championship in 1998, and Coach Willie Fritz, quarterback Michael Pratt's doing an amazing job. Had 394 yards in their conference championship game. Ty J. Spears, that running back,
so good,
such a good player. They've got weapons all over the place. Dorian Williams at linebacker running around on defense, going up against a USC team that got beat twice by the same team in Utah. Now, Utah's made a habit of winning against teams twice in a row. It was Oregon last year to win the conference championship, and, of course, they did it to USC. But Transfer U, they've changed all of college football with the way that Lincoln Riley approached the transfer portal, bringing in not just a couple guys here and there, but literally revamping his whole offense and defense with the transfer portal. You get to see Superman Caleb Williams go out there and make plays. So I'm excited for that game.
I had an opportunity to call a Tulane game this year, and the culture that they've built there. 2 wins a year ago.
Yeah.
2 wins to 11-2, and now in New Year's 6, and Willie Fritz connected to a lot of those vacancies. They've got a really good coach there in New Orleans leading that team now to a New Year's 6 game. Which one do you have an eye on?
Well, whoa, Nelly, the granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl, right? I mean, you're looking at teams coming in right now. Penn State, who I'm excited to see because they're a tough, gritty football team with some really talented young freshman running backs, and they're the team the Big Ten really has hung their hat on, that this is why we're so good, because the quality wins over Penn State and how good they are. And they get to bring their tough grittiness into a team that's probably the toughest, grittiest team in college football in the Utah Utes. And Kyle Whittingham and that defense, I cannot wait to see that matchup of Utah. You know the Sea of Red's going to travel all the way down to L.A. for the game, and it's going to be an unbelievable
Here's
season.
what I love about that, too. You talk about the glitz and the glamour of Oregon in the Pac-12, USC in the Pac-12. It's Utah. It's the substance of Utah 2 years in a row. They've been in the Rose Bowl. What Kyle Whittingham has done there has been a remarkable story. You heard the guys touch on it a second ago, that 12-team playoff that's on the way in college football. Reese, I know we're dealing with the 4-teamer today, but don't tell me this doesn't make you guys salivate at what it could be with the 12 that will take effect in the 2024 season.
Matt, it's going to be good on this day, but as I continue to stand on the table, it comes with a cost. Yep. The Michigan-Ohio State thing is not going to be the same as it was. Years gone by, Alabama, LSU, not what they were. Michigan, Ohio State in 16. That's not to say this won't be fun. Now listen, still got one more year under this format. Not only this one, but next year as well. Here's how it goes. The top 4 seeded conference champions get bye. So even though Utah's not number 4 in the rankings, they are the 4th highest seeded conference champion. So they would get a bye. Clemson, same deal. They get a bye. Those are the top 4 teams that are playing the bowls in the quarterfinals. Behind that, then you go to the rankings for the seeds. Tulane, the 6th conference champion, is the lowest seeded team, so they get the 12. And so on and so forth, and that's how the matchups would be. And the higher seeded teams would have home games. Did you follow all of that politics?
You know people at home are going, I already hate that. What are you talking about? I hate the way they're doing that right now. I mean, it's...
the only thing I don't like about it, and I've been told by commissioners and different people, the ship has sailed. I do think that the conference champions ought to have a threshold that they meet, because this year it's fine, Tulane 16, that's good enough. There's going to be a year where you're going to have 1 or 2 champions not in the top 25,
Right. Yeah.
and they're going to get a spot. And you're going to have years where you're going to have the 4th highest ranked conference champion that may be 14th, and they're going to get a bye. And
hopefully we guard against that, though. I mean,
we're not going to.
If Purdue, for instance, wins yesterday, they're in the playoff. Should they be? No, absolutely not. I think you're watering.
Well, the divisions will help.
The divisions going away will help and kind of curb some of that.
They wouldn't be in the game.
The only thing
which changes.
The thing that kind of frustrates me is Kansas State wins their league, and they don't get to host a playoff game. That to me feels they now have to travel. Hey, congratulations, good win, great job. Go play Tennessee and Neyland. Like that to me is the one thing that I'm a little bit not as fired up about, because they would be the 8 and 9 seeds there at the top of the
we had some
bracket.
rematches in that hypothetical as well, right?
Ohio State,
Penn State was pretty one-sided, and then if Tennessee beats Kansas State, they're playing Georgia again, which obviously was pretty one-sided.
Hey,
it's never going to be perfect.
We can't avoid everything.
All you talk about expansion, it'll be great. There's no downside to
I
it.
want
more.
BCS.
I know,
You want to go back to
you're
2.
working
I want to go backwards.
Oh, man. Some bowl matchups coming in. The Duluth Trading Cure Bowl.
That's
UTSA,
awesome.
Jeff Traylor. How about that? I like that, man.
I like it too. Frank Harris,
quarterback,
kicking off the
super accurate over at UTSA. That's an amazing Group of 5 matchup.
You can find a better stat than 0 for 3 in bowl games all time.
I want to see one of them play a bigger team.
All right, fair enough.
I want to see each of those play a team that's a top 25 team.
They are. It's a top 25 matchup.
A Power 5 team. Slappy, you know what I'm saying?
You got a ranked bowl matchup, Pollock.
I want them to, I want them to be able to prove them. I have an opportunity to prove themselves. Like, hey, Power 5, bring that crap to me.
So UTSA is 0 for 3 all time in bowl games. They'll take a 24 Troy.
And now the New Mexico Bowl now, Albuquerque.
You want to talk about Tanner Mordecai spinning the bean now? There's some velocity on those throws. That's an offense that can get down the field quickly in the vertical passing game. Rasheed Rice to the outside. BYU prides themselves on being physical, so 2 different styles in this one.
Not really this year. They haven't.
BYU got a little sideways.
I
don't know what happened there. I mean,
that's being nice.
I'm using that from now on. I got the ungood from you. I'm using sideways.
Ungood and sideways. Sometimes it's good to be polite, New Mexico Bowl, that's December 17th, 2:15 Eastern on ESPN. Let's take a look at today's road test presented by Goodyear. All of these comebacks by the Horned Frogs. 18 in the regular season meeting against K-State, 17 against the Pokes. That sort of sent the Pokes going sideways shortly thereafter. In the Baylor rally, the Kansas rally, West Virginia before that, and a near miss yesterday when they came from 11 down, tied the game, lost in overtime to Kansas State. But TCU on to the playoff. They'll take on Michigan. Their star offensive lineman Steve Avila with Chris Budden.
Steve, what have the last 12 hours been like for you?
It's been an emotional roller coaster, to say the least. Yesterday didn't end how we wanted to, but it feels a lot better being around the guys. And this kind of helps as well. So, we're excited that we get another shot at this.
This room erupted when you guys were announced at number 3. What was your reaction to the ranking?
I was just amazed. I'm very much excited. We work really hard. Yesterday, again, like I said, yesterday didn't end how we wanted to, but, we get to go back out there and, practice, watch more film, do all the things, and show everybody that we were actually, up there with these teams.
You have at least one more game in front of you. Where does this team need to get better in order to compete and possibly beat Michigan?
Just fix the little things. We got to focus on the little things, and, that maybe sound a little redundant, but that's how close we were, to it being a game yesterday, and, that's a lot of the stuff we emphasize too, and it just sucks that, we fell short yesterday. So I feel like that's what we need to do.
Well, enjoy the day. Congratulations on making the playoff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chris, Steve, thank you very much. TCU, I know they lost the game yesterday. They have some momentum in terms of rallies. Now you shut it down for a while. You talked about being who you are and that there's no time to shore up things. I'm going to be a negative contrarian here. Is there any chance that TCU sort of flattens out and is not up to the challenge against Michigan?
I don't know that I would call it flattens out. I think they're dealing with a different animal in Michigan in this season. I think TCU is sort of where Michigan was last year, where they were better than anybody expected them to be. They came out of their conference, they got into the playoff, and it's like, finally we made it. That was Michigan last year. Now this Michigan team is like, hey, not only did we think we was coming back, we're looking to get back at some people. So I think it's two different animals. If Michigan was to win this game, I wouldn't say it's flattening out for TCU because we've seen them come back a number of times this season. I just think they're dealing with a Michigan team that's playing with a lot of confidence.
You're saying they're going to flatten them. That's what you're saying.
I think Michigan is favored in this game.
Well, thank you. We knew that earlier.
That's all I'm saying.
No, I understand what you're saying. The physical test that Michigan presents with the way they run the football. And by the way, not much lost, even though you lost Corum, who's arguably the best back in the country. You could debate. They're still going to just run it right down your throat. And the QB can, I think now with 2 games left, if you're looking at Michigan, he can become more involved in the run game. It's going to be a tough task.
I think it's going to come down to, though, is like which of these quarterbacks shows up. These are 2 outstanding dual threat quarterbacks. Max Duggan has played more college football. He's more experienced. I'd argue he's been more consistent this year as well. Game in, game out. I don't deny for a second that J.J. McCarthy is the most talented quarterback Jim Harbaugh's coached at Michigan, and because of that, he makes this offense so dangerous. But the 3 games before the Ohio State game, J.J. McCarthy was missing throws, and they have an outstanding group of receivers and tight ends. They need J.J. McCarthy to be in rhythm, playing well, playing the way he has these last 2 games. Otherwise, with Max Duggan on the other side, I still think he does give them a shot.
The one thing I'll say about TCU, can they methodically move the ball down the field time and time again against Michigan? Probably not. No, I mean, Michigan just has such good personnel, really at all 3 levels defensively. But the one thing that you can do as an offense is create big plays. The more I have to snap, if I can create 50, 60-yard plays, which, by the way, they do on a regular basis, you can put a lot of stress on the defense. Now, you look at what Michigan has done all year long. They don't surrender big plays. And what do they do better than anybody else for the most part? In the red zone, as the field condenses, they force you to kick field goals. That's what they did last night against Purdue. They stopped Purdue when they entered the red zone several times there in the first half. But they are going to have to create big plays because if they're just going to try to methodically 5, 6, 7, 8 yards at a pop, it ain't going to happen against Michigan.
Chris Felica is back with us now. Bear, one thing that we've been no stranger to seeing blowouts in the semifinals. Not many close games over the history, the previous 16 semifinals. Is there a chance this one gets away from TCU?
I'm not sure. That game last night was a game into the fourth quarter. with the Purdue team that can throw the football. They're really no threat of a running game at all. Greg hit on it. I mean, Max Duggan, I think, has more 50-yard completions than anybody in the country this year. Yeah, they're not going to be able to methodically go down the field, but they've got at least a threat of a running game with Kendra Miller and DeMercado. This is a great opportunity for TCU, who's going to hear for a month how the title game is going to be either an Ohio State-Michigan rematch or a Michigan-Georgia rematch from a year ago. I think this is a team that, look, Max Duggan nearly willed them to a win yesterday. I think they have an offense that can get big plays, and I think they're going to hang around in this game. I really do.
Certainly hope so. Looking forward to it. TCU has put up great offensive numbers all year, and Duggan has been one of the more fascinating stories, one of the easiest guys to root for in recent memory in college football. As we head into the final hour of our college football playoff selection show, Kyle Whittingham will be with us. Deuce Vaughn will be with us a little later on. Much more ahead. Stick around.
Michigan.
Dreams are still alive here in Ann Arbor.
J.J. McCarthy.
Job's not finished. Go blue.
TCU.
Frogs remain undefeated.
Max Duggan. Welcome to the College Football Playoff.
This is the College Football Playoff Selection Show, presented by AT&T 5G.
Fired up about the pairings? Well, maybe you want to go to the College Football Playoff National Championship and experience it with Playoff Premium. It's the ultimate experience. It offers exclusive package options, prime seating locations, all-inclusive hospitality, many other premium amenities. Visit playoffpremium.com to reserve your championship experience today. And maybe you want to warm up by going to beautiful downtown Orlando in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. Got a great airport there, Lee Corso says. LSU and Purdue, January 2nd, 1 Eastern Time. Remember, that's the day of the Rose Bowl. New Year's Day is on a Sunday. LSU and Purdue.
Aiden O'Connell led the conference in the Big Ten in passing yards per game. They have a dynamic passing attack with a couple different transfers from Iowa, but Charlie Jones, Aiden O'Connell's childhood friend, these two have tremendous chemistry. They're going to put a huge stress on that LSU secondary.
And another bowl matchup to announce, the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Marshall, how about the con? The con going on.
And we've had a chance, because we're here in the studio all season long, to celebrate and watch this UConn football team. And it started off as sort of like joking when they would get a win.
You gotta win.
And then they get bowl eligible. They've done a terrific job at UConn.
They beat some good teams, like beat Liberty. I mean, they beat some good teams.
Yes.
Boston College. Good.
And I'm checking quickly, December 19th. Oh, good. UConn's basketball team's off that day, so they'll be able to watch.
That's not nice.
They play Georgetown
That's more unlike you, Reese. That is not nice.
It's hour 3, man. Come on. Georgetown and UConn. Here's the great Paul Finebaum joining us right now. Paul, did you have any type of exception to be taken from the 4 teams who made the college football playoff?
No, as a curmudgeon, I hate to say they got it right, but they did, Reese, especially at the number 3 position. I thought they rewarded TCU for a tremendous body of work, and Ohio State deserved to get in over Alabama. I know Greg McElroy doesn't want to hear that, but we have to speak the truth on this show, Greg.
Okay, you speak the truth. Let me ask you this, because sometimes you just let Legend and those guys come in there and say what they want. If you had to make a pick, Alabama versus Ohio State, picking the game, picking the winner, Alabama versus TCU, Alabama versus Michigan, how many of those games do you pick Alabama to win?
On a
See,
neutral
you put
site,
me on the spot when I'm a guest on your show sometime, so now turn about fair play.
No, it is a fair question, and I would pick them over TCU. And I think depending on the karma of the day, I might pick them against Ohio State. But I think that would be a really tough one to call. But in the end, Reese, the argument about point spreads doesn't work with me, because that's not how we do this. And I heard Nick Saban say that last night. But it's fair to say that He's been favored all but 2 times since 2009 in the SEC championship game. He was an underdog in that game. That's a game that Greg actually won as a quarterback against Tim Tebow in a 1 versus 2 matchup. And since then, only twice has he been an underdog. And if we awarded national championships based on point spreads, Nick Saban would have 14 or 15 national championships as opposed to 6. So it's an interesting way of looking at it, and I know he chose that way, but I don't think it's the way this committee should have done it.
No, I think you employ football judgment and who do you think better when it's close at the margins. And Alabama didn't do enough, in my judgment, to make the field. And I agree with you 100%. Ohio State. I don't think there was a good choice, just to be candid about it, at the end, based on who had accomplished what at the end of the season. But among the choices that were available, Ohio State was the best one. Is that a fair enough way to put it?
I think that is, and that's what we're doing here. And thank goodness, because we have so many great choices here, we're not going to have to do this in 2 years. We'll be talking about who the 13th, 14th, or 15th best team in the country is. But ultimately, this was a classic case, Reese, for the BCS. We had 2 elite teams, and everyone else was jockeying for position. So back in the day, not that long ago, in 2013, we would have had a Michigan-Georgia matchup, and nobody really would have had an argument.
You and Joey Galloway locked in now on Bring Back the BCS. Paul, always a pleasure, my friend. Enjoy tomorrow. I'm sure there'll be some fireworks here and there.
I think there will. Thank you.
All right. There is the great Paul Finebaum joining us here on Selection Day. And Boo Corrigan will be here again, talk a little bit about the rest of the committee's work in terms of putting the New Year's Six together as they have done their task.
Wasn't a good choice available. That's what you said, Reese Davis.
Are you ready? Okay, say no more.
I'm okay with that.
Take a look at our Capital One Bowl Mania preview. Some games matchup. The Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl, Louisiana against Houston. If you've watched Houston play much this year, you know somebody's going to get a big lead, somebody's going to spit it up, and then there's going to be something weird that happens at the end of the game.
Could be overtime.
Overtime's a possibility. What is it, 3 in a row at one point this season Houston played. And the roofclaim.com Boca Raton Bowl, Liberty against Toledo. Liberty without Hugh Freeze, now on to Auburn.
Jamie Chadwell coming over from Coastal Carolina.
And Toledo after
beating Ohio. Yes.
Denying poor Ohio a MAC championship again. I think it's the 5th time.
DeQuan Finn, their quarterback at Toledo, pretty good. Dual threat, hurt you a lot of ways.
And they'd finished the season ungood, Pollock, but then they rebounded yesterday and won the MAC, and you'll see them coming up against Liberty on December 20th. Boo Corrigan, chair of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, is back with us. Boo, we talked earlier about the 4 teams that the committee put into the playoff, but the committee's work's not necessarily done then, although this year fewer spots to fill. What was the process for you guys in terms of ranking teams, which ultimately wound up sliding into New Year's Six games?
You know, as we looked at it, we want to make sure, and those of you who have been through the mock understand, you know, that we spend a good amount of time on the top 4, but we also spent so much time making sure we get all of the top 25 right and looking at it and evaluating it. And it was interesting. This process, you know, only 2 of the top 4 teams are conference champions and won their conference championship game. Usually it's 3 or 4, so you got to look at that. And then you also have the teams that, you know, played this past weekend, won, and then they move up. So it was an interesting process for sure.
In terms of looking at this holistically and from a future standpoint, I know we're ultimately going to do away with divisions. You're the athletic director at NC State. The ACC's already announced that they're on their way to doing that. What is this? How instructive has this been to you about how much value should be placed on winning conference championships as opposed to the evaluation put forth by the committee every week?
Well, I think it is really important because it shows your body of work as you've gone through it. And, you know, the idea, and as you alluded to, Reese, we're going to go away from divisions in the ACC. The idea of that, you know, Clemson-Florida State game would have been a really telling game this year as you look at it. All credit to North Carolina for winning their division and getting there. But, you know, in total, as you look at it, you know, those championship games do mean something. It shows the body of work, and I think we showed that in our rankings.
As you go down, and the highest ranked team from outside the Power 5 conferences, a group of 5, Tulane won the American, and they got in. How would you characterize, say, the evaluation of Tulane and the evaluation of the other 2 teams from outside, the other 2 champions, UTSA and Troy, who also made the rankings? They're not close necessarily in rankings, but in terms of the evaluation of schedules and placement in the standings.
Well, you look at UTSA as a tough loss, or a loss to Texas, a loss to Houston. Troy has that early season loss to Ole Miss, and then I think y'all alluded to it earlier, the incredible Hail Mary, where the guy catches the ball on the 5-yard line, and then in turn runs in for the winning score for App State. And then you look at Tulane in the big win they had over Kansas State. At Kansas State. Additional loss to Southern Miss, but again, 2 wins over UCF, and just in our eyes continue to grow and move up the charts, if you will, as the season went on.
Yeah, Tulane able to avenge that earlier loss against UCF, win the conference championship yesterday. So, Boo, thanks a lot for being with us. I'm sure the plans include for a little relaxation, at least for a day or so coming up.
Yes, I certainly hope so. But before I go, I just want to thank y'all for all you do for college football. It's really great, and the game day experience and everything that y'all do is really appreciated.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it too. You've been very gracious with your time throughout the course of the season, and we look forward to seeing you at some point during the playoff.
All right, look forward to it. Thanks.
All right, there is Boo Corrigan, chair of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee.
Thank God I don't have to answer questions from Reese anymore. That would be thank God he's done making me try to look ahead.
No, I don't try to make him do that. I'm always ready. You know what I'm going to look ahead to? I'm going to look ahead to the Rose Bowl, where Kyle Whittingham's going to have to pay property tax. He's back there.
That's a dude right there.
Welcome back to the College Football Playoff Selection Show, presented by AT&T 5G.
The mayhem moment, brought to you by Allstate, came on Friday night. There's Captain Jack Sparrow, also known as Cam Rising, leading Utah past number 4 USC 47-24. Kyle Whittingham, for the 2nd consecutive year, having his team lift the trophy and head to Pasadena, where they played a spectacular game. Came up just a tad short against Ohio State. They'll have a chance against Penn State January 2nd, 5 o'clock Eastern time, from the most picturesque place in college football, Rose Bowl. We'll look forward to seeing the Utes, and Penn State will be there on January 2nd for that. Pleased to be joined by the head coach of the Utes, Kyle Whittingham. Kyle, some of the guys have said, first of all, we wanted to thank you for giving us something to talk about today. Had you not won the Pac-12, everything would have been pretty cut and dry. What was the moment where things changed on Friday night? You guys got behind 17-3. USC seemed to be rolling, and from that point forward, it was just like boot to the face after that.
Yeah, I would say the real turning point was when we took over second quarter, minute and 40-ish to go in the half, and executed a perfect 2-minute drive and got in the end zone to tie it up at halftime. And that gave us all kinds of momentum going into the half, and our kids were very confident at that point.
Coach, how tough is your quarterback? I mean, we saw that dude get drilled, his helmet fly off, and he's like, still got pigskin. I ain't worried about it. I mean, obviously you get him as a transfer and then bring him to your culture. I mean, how cool was this kid, and how tough is he?
He is tough as nails, and as you mentioned, he took that hit and jumped up smiling. I mean, he had a big smile on his face, and he is our leader. There's no doubt about that. He's been instrumental to our success, the last 2 years, and can't say enough good things about him.
Coach, congratulations on the victory. We were having a conversation in the studio actually just last night as we were watching you guys play, and the question came up, what makes somebody want to go to Utah? Outside of yourself, was probably one of the most underrated coaches in college football. What would you say would be one of the top couple of things that would make somebody want to come play for Utah?
Well, I'd say, first of all, our culture. We have a great culture here at the University of Utah. Players love each other, get along with each other. I believe we're the most diverse team in America. We're almost exactly 1/3 African-American, 1/3 Caucasian, 1/3 Polynesian. And I don't believe anyone in the country has that blend of players to that degree. Also, it's beautiful up here. Salt Lake City is a beautiful setting up here in the Rocky Mountains. We're us and the Jazz, the only show in town up here in Salt Lake. And great fan support. Been sold out for 10 straight years at Rice-Eccles Stadium. And we just, a lot going for us. Plus, you're going to win a bunch of games if you come here.
Also, Coach, sneaky good Mexican food scene in Salt Lake City as well in Utah. It's actually outstanding.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about this year's team in particular because you guys have faced a lot of adversity this year. You had a tough loss late on the road at Florida week 1. Key injuries to key players this season in Keithy, Kincaid for a little bit, both tight ends, Tavian Thomas at running back as well. And you found yourself down by 14 points both times you played USC this year, yet found a way to come back. What is it that makes your squad so resilient?
Well, first of all, they handle adversity. I mean, we talk about that all the time as far as not flinching, just continue to play through whatever comes your way. We have a great deal of confidence on this football team and a real belief. We believe in each other. We believe in our process. We believe in the coaches. Coaches believe in the players. So I just think we have a lot of positive mojo going on in our program. And our guys, there's no doubt about it, there's no quit in them at all.
Coach, the Pac-12 on Selection Day has often been a little bit of an afterthought in some ways. However, this year, it feels like the Pac-12 is as strong and as deep as it's ever been. 6 teams ranked in the top 18. You've been in the league a while now. What can you say about the depth of the league and the quality of an opponent that you get on a week-to-week basis?
Well, I think you hit it right on the head. We're as good as we've been in many, many years. Now, we've only been in the league 11 years, but I think that there's definitely 6 teams, as you mentioned, that are playing really good football and very deserving to be in the top 20. And so I just think it's a situation where it's competitive in this league, and it works to our disadvantage, I guess, with the CFP because we cannibalized each other a little bit. And that's exactly what happened Saturday night or Friday night. And I think that's one of the main reasons we've been kept out of the CFP for so long is the balance of the league and just the quality that we have throughout 1 through 12.
Kyle, your program is built. You went to the Pac-12 championship game a couple of times, then broke through and won it. Went to the Rose Bowl. It was a seminal moment to arrive there last year. Now you get a chance to go back against Penn State. How would you describe what the opportunity is now to break through, follow the Rose Bowl trip with potentially a Rose Bowl victory?
Well, that would be awesome, obviously, and our guys are excited to be back in the game, first of all. It was a great game last year. Came right down to the wire. Ohio State played exceptionally well, particularly on offense, and got the win. But we're going back with the another opportunity to try to get a win. Penn State, got a lot of respect for those guys. Coach Franklin's done a great job there. I've already started watching the film. They play outstanding defense and just a really balanced, well-coached football team. But our guys will be excited about the challenge and the opportunity, and we're looking forward to the trip.
Your team's a pleasure to watch every week. Look forward to seeing them in Pasadena against Penn State. Kyle, thanks for being with us.
Appreciate you having me on, guys. Thank you very much.
All right, that is the great Kyle Whittingham. Joe, you mentioned one of the underrated coaches in college football. I'd say, given his length of tenure, might be of all time, certainly the recent era. He's done a remarkable job.
Players, amazing.
Show you some of the great plays this season that shaped the playoff coming up.
As one, we ride together. We gotta get them. There's never a time to reject the moment. Nowhere to run and nowhere to hide.
Everything's right out in front of you. It's almost like a second lease on life.
Michigan, TCU, Georgia, and Ohio State for the semifinals. And, well, they call it the Valero Alamo Bowl. I'd like to call it the Steve Sarkisian Bowl. The current Texas coach and former Washington coach will square off. The December 29th.
He's known as a quarterback guru, but he doesn't have the best quarterback in this game.
Wow.
Washington spinning the magic bean on the other side.
If Texas wins, are they back?
No.
Fair question.
Call Joe Tapp.
Yes,
Hey,
I think it's a fair
They've
question.
been back. I won't slap this yet.
Think of all the soap operas in the bowl games in the state of Texas. You have this, and then you also have Lincoln Riley going back to the greater Dallas area in the Cotton Bowl against Tulane in front of all of those welcoming Texas fans, and I'm sure the Oklahoma fans, a sizable alumni contingent in that area who'll be eager to come out and wish him well in his new venture as head coach at USC.
They'll be wearing some Tulane gear for sure.
Oh, yeah. Don't you know that? There may be a ton of people in the stands. Tulane's going to pick up a bunch of new fans. Capital One Bowl Mania back again this year. Pick the bowl game winners for a chance to win up to $1 million. Create a group, join a group, get all your friends, relatives, make your picks now. ESPN.com/BowlMania. You guys want to look? You know, every game, you can sometimes take a game and narrow it down to one play. Here's some plays that shape the playoff. Here's stats. This is 3rd and 10.
Yeah. Watch him get in this end zone. This set the tone.
Call me.
This.
Call me.
They got a cell phone tonight.
That was a statement game, right? Because Tennessee was #1 in the country heading into that one. And how about Georgia's defense holding Hendon Hooker in Tennessee to 289 yards?
Game not as close as the score indicated, by the way. There's your guy, Michael Penix Jr. UW beat Oregon.
What a year. I mean, and honestly, this was a little bit, at this point, you're starting to think, all right, does Oregon potentially find their way back into the playoff mix? And not going to happen against UW.
Michigan and Illinois, J.J. McCarthy, Isaiah Gash. That's a 4th down completion to move the stick.
Don't show
That's the game we're talking about where he missed some throws.
But there's also
for Ohio State. This was the one McCarthy missed some throws and sort of gave some question marks on whether he could pull it off or not.
Spencer Rattler, no relation to Spencer Sanders.
How well did he play the last 2 games of the season? Remember, threw a pick 6 earlier in this game. Also took a safety and bounced right back.
Roller coaster.
Game we saw yesterday, Pollock, this was right in front of us. Kendra Miller trying to get in.
Big stuff. Kansas State bows their neck on 4th down.
In overtime.
Yeah, in OT. Make a big play. And the field goal to go with it. And Emaw Nation goes bananas.
Every man a Wildcat. Boy, Duggan's going to the playoff. I mean, it's a cliche in sports that he left it all on the field. That dude did. Just talked to Kyle Whittingham. Utah upsets USC. They steamrolled him in the second half.
It's the Achilles heel of USC all season long. Did a good job getting takeaways. Couldn't tackle great.
And number 7 had a tough day.
That almost got $1 in the final last night.
Thomas Yasmin, who grew up playing rugby in Australia, discarding folks. Michigan and Ohio State, one of the back-breaking plays for the Wolverines against the Buckeyes.
Could have picked a number of these long touchdowns in this game. I think it's 3 touchdowns over 75, over 45, in an explosive Michigan offense that we hadn't seen all season.
Now, remember, Alabama had missed a field goal against Tennessee. It would have given him the lead. And then Brew McCoy makes the catch from Hendon Hooker. That gives Chase McGrath a chance. And Chase needed every yard he could have gotten.
Man.
Knuckleball.
All these field goals are mishits. A&M last year, he mishit that.
That one got
through.
tipped.
And then look at that.
That one got tipped.
That scene was bananas, though. That scene was nuts.
Number 2, TCU and Baylor. Amari DiMaccardo.
Hurry.
There are no timeouts left.
Come on.
They call this bazooka.
Just call that hurricane.
I love, hurricane.
Hurricane. Kicker, the last one on the field.
I love it. The kicker didn't step it off or anything. Just went right to his spot.
He didn't have time. He was the last one out there.
And the bazooka goes boom.
There you go. Wow. You know, Sonny Dykes said he'd hit like 14 out of 15 of those in practice without stepping it off. And then the number 1 play that shaped the CFP, LSU knocking off Alabama, 2-point conversion in overtime, won the game. If Alabama stops that, then maybe they get in over Ohio State, as it is Alabama finishes 5th, and Ohio State gets the last bid into the field. They will take on Georgia in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl on New Year's Eve. So Chris Felica back with us now, Bear. We went through 10 of them. Any of your favorite moments from this past season?
Tennessee snapped that losing streak against Alabama. That's clear number 1 for me. It was just a celebration and exultation. You finally beat your rival for the first time in years. The joy on the faces of all those fans, that represented everything that's great about college football and what we love. And then They got to experience the other end of it a few weeks later in Columbia when South Carolina put forth probably the best single performance of the year. I was just going through those moments and like working on some stuff for the Herbie Awards, and I was thinking if we had like a redemption award, like Spencer Rattler, the way their season started to what he did the end of the year against Clemson and Tennessee, from where he was at the start of the year to where he is now, what a great story for him in persevering.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite moment of the season?
I think when you look at the last-second field goal by TCU when they ran on the field, I'm not sure everybody was on the same page, but they pulled it off. Sort of felt like that moment was like, okay, I think they can run the table. Like, it's like we were waiting on them not to run the table, and in that moment, it's like, I think they can do it. And they went on and did it until last night.
I think to me, Donovan Edwards and those big runs late in that win against Ohio State. I just think back to Michigan season.
I don't think that. I don't like that one that much.
I wonder why. You were liking it up for a half.
Of all the stuff you could have picked.
It was just such a big game for them because we knew, again, they needed that win. If they lose to Ohio State and everything shapes up the way it does, I'm not sure Michigan would have got in over in Alabama. I think that would have been a real discussion. But in a game where they didn't have Blake Corum, they didn't have Mike Morris, their best pass rusher, to go on the road into the shoe, losing at halftime to Ohio State, and then have Donovan Edwards step up with those massive runs late in the game and really polish that game off. Yeah.
I mean, is there anything else you want to add to that?
My God. Takes a 22-point lead in Columbus. Goodness. I got one that's not on the playoff radar, but I just remember watching the game, and it was bananas. Cam Rising going for 2 after Utah scored the first time they played USC. And they were down 14. They come running back. And I thought it was a no-brainer. Like 30-something seconds left. I'm like, Utah's already got a couple of losses. Bro, pull the trigger. Like, go for 2, try to beat USC. The play wasn't there. He runs it in for the 2-point conversion, and they win by 1 against USC the first time.
Yeah, that was wild for sure. And, I mean, who knows? I mean, if SC wins that game, maybe they're still in the playoff mix as well. I think the one to me has nothing to do with the playoff, but it actually set the table for what's been one of the best stories of the season, Florida State's resurgence. And it was actually week 1. They fumble on the goal line going in, putting the game on ice against LSU. LSU now has new life. 99-yard touchdown drive led by Jaden Daniels. At that point, you're like, well, hang on, maybe LSU's pretty good. Then they line up to kick the game-tying field goal to send it to overtime. Florida State blocks it. Next thing you know, they, of course, lose a couple games in the middle of the season. NC State game had it within reach of potentially winning it. Inside field goal range, get an interception. But what a job by Mike Norvell. He kind of saw things and the belief start to kind of generate there in New Orleans in the first week of the season. So,
would you like to help Joey out and recount Florida State beating Florida too? Also, as one of your moments, help Joey get back to Jesse a little bit here.
Run down like Jesse did in the middle. It was like we were reliving the game. Jesse went so deep.
Play by play.
We're going to break. We got commercials.
Jordan Travis breaking 16 tackles on that sack and scrambling to his right. That was a pretty dope move.
Max Duggan's effort in the Big 12 title game didn't lead to a win. But watching him bring his team back to tie the game, not just with the runs, 95 yards rushing on that drive or something, and then the 2-point throw.
You love seeing that kind of thing. Caleb Williams, the same thing in their game, out there limping, hanging in there. You love to see it.
Could I go ahead and point out the fact, and look, I'm all for giving Max Duggan the love. Deuce Vaughn and the fellas won the game. They're the ones that lifted the trophy. And here, before we wrap up on the college football playoff selection show, we will hear from the diminutive Kansas State star who plays like a giant. Deuce Vaughn on the way to the Sugar Bowl and carrying a Big 12 championship trophy with him.
This is the College Football Playoff Selection Show, presented by AT&T 5G.
The Camellia Bowl in Montgomery, Georgia Southern. Clay Helton and his team into a bowl game, their 5th bowl appearance. They won 3 of the previous 4. On December 27th at noon, Buffalo, who just got bowl eligible, will go in their 6th bowl appearance. You'll be able to see that, part of a cavalcade of bowls on ESPN. And there's also the Frisco Bowl. Oldest quarterback in college football, Austin Aune, former baseball player.
30 years old?
Yeah, I think he's unless he's had a birthday, he was 29. Did he turn 30?
I think he's 30. Let's put him at 30.
Okay, we'll do it.
A lot of Superdog implications with North Texas this year.
Yeah.
Pick some North Texas this year.
They take on Boise State. That's December 17th.
And a good freshman quarterback, Taylon Green. He's old versus young.
Yeah,
it's gonna be good.
Very. Got a lot of ability, a lot of talent. Watch him closely against Wyoming. Wyoming should have won that game outright. Instead, they just covered.
Super dog.
Frisco Bowl is presented by Surf Pro. Yesterday, the Big 12 championship game. Kansas State built a double-digit lead against TCU. Saw it go away in the waning moments and then won it on a field goal in overtime. Deuce Vaughn was sensational. 26 carries, 130 yards, also had 30 receiving yards and broke some ankles on a 44-yard touchdown run. And now Kansas State is champions of the Big 12, going to a New Year's Six Bowl for the first time since 2012. They will meet Alabama in the All-State Sugar Bowl. That's on New Year's Eve prior to the college football playoff semifinals. Kickoff at noon Eastern time on ESPN. And when that game comes on, you will see Kansas State star, the great Deuce Vaughn, who's with us now. Deuce, that was a tremendous game yesterday. You guys had a big lead on TCU in Fort Worth, ended up losing that game. How would you describe the mindset once the Frogs caught you guys again in the second half and forced overtime?
Yes, sir. Going into the game, we understood that down in Fort Worth, the first time we met with them, the type of football team they are. They're competitive players all over the football field, and they have a really good football team. We knew that we were going to have to battle for it the entire 60 minutes and more once we got into that game. And once they came back, it was all about staying neutral as a football team. Understand that there was still a lot more football left to play in that fourth quarter, and to come together and, man, just get out of there with a win any way we could.
Deuce, congratulations on a great win, man. And since Will Howard's taken over at quarterback a few weeks ago, this offense has just seemed to come alive. There's been a lot of balance. You just seem more explosive. He's making plays, both throwing it deep downfield and running it as well. What kind of impact has Will Howard had on your offense since taking over?
He's had a big-time impact. Man, the work that he's put in over these 3 years, we came in the same class together. The work that he's put in, the way that he's just engulfed himself in the playbook and how to become a better football player for this football team and to come in and play the way that he does. Man, he's given us the chance to make plays. You look at the highlights, he's putting the ball on the field, giving our receivers a chance to make plays in the end zone and all over the field. And, man, we're so appreciative of him and the way that he's came in with all the confidence in the world.
Deuce, when you look at the upcoming opponent, Alabama, of course, been a standard in college football for quite a while. You guys now get the chance to play against them on a massive platform leading into the semifinal game. So how do you anticipate your teammates' reaction being knowing that they get the chance to play Alabama and now to potentially try your hand against a team that might be a little ticked off that they're outside the playoff?
Absolutely. It's a big-time game, Sugar Bowl, New Year's Six game, and to play a school that's prestigious as Alabama, one of the Blue Bloods, man, it's another opportunity for us to come together as a football team one more time and to play together. We set out on this journey 12 months ago, and to be in this position is amazing. And to play a team like that is a great challenge for us, and, man, we're super excited for it, and, man, we relish this opportunity.
Deuce, you've been known to take a lot of notes on your opponents and be very prepared. How does that help you get ready for whichever opponent you're ready to play?
It's helped a whole bunch. I knew that the physical side would be taken care of by the strength and conditioning staff, and I knew that everything going on the field would be taken care of by talent and everything. But the mental side is really what I've grown over these past 3 years, to be able to kind of dissect the defense and understand what pictures you could get, and depending on if I see this, there's a good chance this is going to happen. It'll give you some clues, some indicators that can help you play fast in the football game.
Deuce, this time of year in the bowl season, especially for guys who've accomplished so much on the field as you have, the question becomes, what is there to be gained for a star player particularly from a bowl game that doesn't have championship implications beyond raising the trophy for that one game? What is there to gain for you in this game?
For me, when I came here to K-State 3 years ago, I talked with Coach Kleiman, and he talked about a culture that we were building here and how it's going to win championships. And the culture has been built that way. And these guys, my teammates, everybody inside this locker room, everybody inside this program, this building, man, it's another opportunity for us to be together one last time. Everybody understands that football teams aren't the same every single year. So to come back and have this time down in a different city, to be together for 5-6 days and get to go play another football game, man, that's what's to be gained.
Well, if yesterday in Arlington was any indication, there will be a sea of purple in New Orleans to support you guys in the All-State Sugar Bowl against Alabama. Deuce, best of luck. Thanks for being with us. Congratulations on the Big 12 championship, by the way.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me today.
There's one of the finest players in the country, one of the most enjoyable guys to watch. Predictions are coming. Is anybody going to break the mold? It's going to be 1 versus 2 in the championship game.
And the drought is over. Georgia on the mountaintop. Alabama back on top. LSU sits on the throne. The Tigers reclaim their crown. We conquered a mountain that ain't ever been conquered.
College Football Playoff Selection Show is presented by AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure.
Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, one of the semifinals on New Year's Eve, will be number 1 Georgia against number 4 Ohio State. Buckeyes trying to bounce back after the loss to Michigan. The Bulldogs, meanwhile, cruised in with the SEC championship victory over LSU. Undefeated record. Bulldogs trying to follow up and go back-to-back in time.
We didn't build this program on hoping for one-year wonders. We built the program to be sustained.
And it's intercepted. Picked off at the 8-yard line. And it's a touchdown. Even when it looked like Bennett was in trouble.
You want respect, you strike them. And you strike them, and you strike them.
Now you can hear the crowd going wild.
Stetson Bennett has been playing better than any quarterback in the nation.
The walk-on wasn't walking there.
The guy wins. The guy knows how to play the game.
Missouri has done a great job getting Stetson Bennett off of his game tonight.
And touchdown, Georgia. And number 1 finally has the lead. And Georgia's going to escape for the win.
Georgia needs to win on Saturday more than Tennessee.
Bennett loads it, fires to the end zone, touchdown, and it's intercepted.
You just don't do it any better than that.
With this kind of victory, I would imagine dogs leapfrog and get back into that number 1 position.
We came to battle, we came for war.
The clock hits 0, and Georgia is your 2022 SEC football champions, 13-0 here in 2022.
Georgia is now the program against who everyone else tries to measure themselves. That is the prize, College Football Playoff National Championship Trophy presented by Dr. Pepper. This is year 9 of the current playoff format. 8 times 2 is 16, Pollock. 3 semifinals have been decided by single digits.
Okay.
So
I thought you were going to ask me to do math.
No.
Please don't put me on the spot.
No, I was just signaling to you that you're going to make the pick first in the Fiesta Bowl. Who's going to win? Will it be close? I'm sorry, the Peach Bowl. I beg your pardon, Peach Bowl. Georgia and Ohio State.
Wish you didn't fix that. I was going to go. First of all, it's the Peach.
Yeah, I know.
I think Georgia's going to win. I do think we'll see a better version of Ohio State. I think they'll be ready to roll. I think they'll be healthy. But I think it will boil down to Georgia being at home in that environment. I'll take the Dogs.
I'm going to go Dogs too, and
Close game,
I love their defense, and they've got a lot of NFL talent, and a lot of speed. The problem for C.J. Stroud and Ohio State is that
88.
Jalen Carter's healthy now for Georgia up front, and he's wrecking people's game plans at this point. He's a big reason why this defense has 19 sacks in the last 6 games. They've gotten better, disrupting the run game and getting after the quarterback. Number 88 will be the X factor in that game.
Yeah, Jesse Palmer made some statements before South Carolina played Clemson. Shane Beamer got motivated. They went out, they beat Clemson. Ohio State wins this game. And afterwards, Ryan Day says, Palmer, you like apples?
How do you like them apples?
Give me the Buckeyes.
I'm going Georgia. I need to know that Ohio State has fixed the issues that plagued them against Michigan.
Like,
can they? I will welcome the apple, because right now I think that Georgia wins this game convincingly, because I'm not sure Ohio State can handle the adversity that Georgia's going to put on them.
Red delicious.
All right, so the other semifinal will be Michigan against TCU in the Fiesta Bowl, Verbo Fiesta Bowl. Who wins this game? Is it close?
Michigan, physicality. And I think they're going to put it on them pretty good.
Yeah, and J.J. McCarthy, too. I think he continues to play the way he's played these last 2 games, making a difference running and throwing the football.
Yeah, like Michigan also in this game. I think that TCU in their second half will be put away by Michigan in their run game, setting up an Ohio State-Michigan national championship game.
Yeah, 2 teams that are built for the second half. I like the one that can run it. give me Michigan, take care of business, and kind of control the line of scrimmage in the game.
Okay, Felica, who do you think is going to win the semifinals?
Well, one, I do think it's going to be a little bit closer than a lot of people might think. And I think TCU will hang around, but I do think Michigan will win. So I think we're going to get a rematch of that semifinal from a year ago. And I do think Georgia will repeat as national champs. Nothing fancy, nothing overly dramatic. It's chalk, I know, but I think Georgia's the best team.
All right. That's where I am.
No,
that's where I think I am. Okay. I think I'm not sure Georgia will really be challenged. I mean, win both by double figures.
Right. Apples, 2 reasons.
We're going to get apples.
Write that one down.
Yeah.
Not even going to get
win both by double figures. Championship drive, rankings reaction coming up right now. Done.